I will now call to order the special meeting, the mid-month special meeting of the Fairfax Town Council on June 16th. And if we can get a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cutrano.
Present.
Councilmember Kohler.
Here.
Councilmember Goddard.
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
Here.
And Mayor Ackerman.
I'm here.
Present.
And just to explain to the public that we are starting a little late because we ran overtime. I take responsibility for that. We had a joint meeting with the ResJ right before this, and we really just didn't have enough time for all the discussion that we needed to have. So we had to cut that short and move on to this meeting. So can we get a motion for approval of the agenda and affidavit of posting, and any comments on the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call on that?
Yes, that was a motion. Cutrano, second Kohler.
Second Kohler, yes.
Councilmember Goddard.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kohler.
Here.
Council
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes. Councilmember, where was I? Cutrano
Yes.
and Mayor Ackerman.
Yes. Okay, and a report out. We had a closed session meeting earlier, and we gave direction to staff. So nothing further to report. I will read the land acknowledgement.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I think also you're supposed to report out on your closed session on June 10th, and there was also nothing.
Yeah.
There was also nothing reportable action to report.
Yeah, no reportable actions on June 10th either. So the land acknowledgement, I'll read that just to make it as quick as possible. The Fairfax Town Council acknowledges that we're located on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people of present-day Marin County. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging. And I'll just very briefly state the meeting protocol. The mayor will maintain order at the meetings. Council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain standards of tolerance and civility. And please, let's remember that. The council will review the agenda at 10 p.m. and again at 11:30 p.m. Hopefully we won't run that late tonight, but we will see. Okay. So we have, there's one announcement if you would, I think it's an important one, and it's something that was asked of me by former mayor and now Marin Water District board member Larry Bragman. He asked that we announce, this is important for us all to know, we are in a historic drought. Rainfall measurements for the year are at their lowest amount in 140 years. And as we all know, we're now entering a really dangerous hot week with possible winds. This is a dangerous time. Marin Water has asked residents to reduce their water use by 40% to stretch our supplies. Our latest figure indicate that Marin residents have reduced their water consumption by almost 20%. That's a great start, but we still have a ways to go. Your water district is offering unprecedented rebates on turf replacement, rain catchment systems, gray water systems, high efficiency washers, and other conservation programs. Please go to the MMWD website for more information. Every drop counts and your cooperation is essential and greatly appreciated. Thank you, Larry, for providing that announcement for us. Okay. So we have the consent calendar to look at. Do we have any council comments on that? Yes, Vice Mayor Hellman?
Yeah, I'd like to pull number 5 or at least clarify a few things, either.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard also that there might be some things that we need to discuss on number 5. So let's pull number 5 and we'll put that at the end of the meeting. Renee, Councilmember Goddard.
Yes, thanks. Number 7, I just had a question, and so I don't think I need to pull it. But if I could go ahead and just
Yeah, a question for staff that would be appropriate now. Yeah.
ask staff and also my colleague who's also on Measure A. This was the authorization the town manager to prepare and submit fiscal 21-22 work plan for the use of the Measure A park funds. And so when the pump track was listed as carrying over the $10,000, was that done in order to actually move forward in pursuit of using this funding? Barbara, could you explain that?
Yeah, so our representative from Park, Chris Borjon, said that they're still looking for a location. They're not sure if they can find one. So we felt it was a good idea to leave that on at this juncture. So just FYI.
Okay, excellent. And
Nothing final yet.
Yeah, full disclosure, I am on the Measure A Parks, but I was not able to attend the meeting. So thank you, and thank you for keeping that moving forward. I'd also like to pull number 5.
Okay, yes, we can pull number 5, I think. Any other comments on the consent calendar? And then we can go to public comment. Okay, seeing that, Michelle, if you would open up public comment, please, for the items on the consent calendar.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So if anyone has comments on any of the items on the consent calendar, now is the time to raise your hand to make those comments.
And number 5 will be pulled, so not on number 5. We'll be talking about that at the end of the evening.
I don't see any raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we'll close public comment on the consent calendar items. And if there's anything further from council, we could, if there's not anything further from council in terms of discussion of the consent calendar, we can entertain a motion to.
I would move consent with the exception of number 5 and pulling it, placing it at the end of the meeting.
Second. Oh,
Okay. Michelle, would you please do a roll call vote on that, on the consent calendar?
Yes, Councilmember Kohler,
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Cutrano,
yes.
Councilmember Goddard,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellman,
Yes.
and Mayor Eckerman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So now we move to item 9, which is a public hearing. Garrett, would you start us out with a staff report on that, please?
Sure. This is a public hearing for your fiscal year 21-22 operating capital budget. And actually, I have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And because I have to look at a different area, I'll probably stop this video. So hang on. Here we go. Okay, so oops, hang on a sec. Let's see. Go fit to window. Okay,
Working in it.
so can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so your fiscal year 21-22 operating capital budget, it's approximately 18.2 million. General fund appropriations, which is your operating portion of the budget, it's 11.6. CIP, which means capital improvement program, it's about 5.4 million. Special funds, debt service, it's about 1.2 when you all add it all up. it's 18.2 million. It should be noted that this budget actually reflects the direction received at the May 27th Council Budget Workshop. So typically we have a chart that says, where does the money come from? So you can see property taxes, 55%, sales tax, we have our 1% sales tax, and then we have our add-on sales tax. That's about 13%. Measure F for special immunity tax represents about another 5%. And then all the rest kind of breaks out from franchise fees, charges for other services. So where does it go? Well, for usually communities our size, most of it goes to fire and police services. That's about 50% of your budget. Then it's spread out among some of the other uses. And fire is a contract. And so what we did is we do another, the slides, there we go. Okay. So we thought we'd show expenditures by categories. You can see most of it is going to salaries and benefits and payroll. That's about 45%. A lot goes to contractor services, but that's somewhat a little skewed because when you break that down, 2/3 of that, or almost 2/3 of that, goes to actually our fire. So we're part of a fire JPA with Ross Valley Fire Department, along with San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow, and Ross. And so a large portion of what falls under contractual services is fire. Then you can see it breaking out with the other departments. Town attorney is a contract. Planning and building is a little high this year, and we'll touch on that, but most of that's for professional services related to special studies, such as the housing element and other studies. So what are our revenue assumptions for 21-22? So typically, spend a little time with that. Typically, we compare proposed to adopted. So we have our proposed fiscal year 21-22. Normally, we compare that to the adopted budget for 2021. But you may recall back in fiscal year 2021, our current year, we actually projected significant decreases in revenue, especially in sales tax and fees due to COVID-19. But that actually did not happen for sales tax revenue. Sales tax revenues came in much higher than we projected. Other revenues that we had decreased had also come in much higher. So what we did is if you really just compare their proposed fiscal year 21-22 revenues to the actual revenues we received for this year, we'll probably experience for next year a projected increase of almost 4%, a little more than $300,000 in total general fund revenues to the town. Sales tax is actually projected to go up at a modest gain of about 2.3%, and that's compared to the actuals we project we receive for this current fiscal year. And it's also, sales tax projections are also come from our sales tax consultant. So it's something that there's a professional firm that's actually basing these projections on their past experience. Property tax, that's always the factor that usually goes up. It went up last year. And we project it'll go up about 6%, and that's based on kind of estimates from the county assessor's office. What we did is we'll show there's increased revenue projections for utility user tax and garbage franchise fees. Part of that really is we're just putting in numbers that we used from previous years. Last year, we thought a lot of those numbers would actually be decreased due to COVID. It actually didn't turn out that way or weren't as low as we thought they could possibly be. So we're just really putting back projections that we use pre-COVID. Some real revenue cuts are, we're getting less interest. Interest rates are, well below 1% in LAIF, and recreation revenues. We do anticipate that the pavilion will be closed for a majority of next year. So all of at least half the fiscal year. And so we've reduced revenues based on the pavilion. And one thing to note in the budget, it does have a placeholder for the American Rescue Plan Act. We're anticipating we'll receive about 1.8 million. The council does have time. We had recommended holding a special workshop to kind of evaluate the funding and talk about how the council would like to allocate that funding. Expenditure projections for fiscal year 21-22 up by about 4%, a little over 400,000. And a lot of this does reflect council direction at the budget workshop. Council requested one of their goals and directed staff that really hire a full-time public works director. They added about 55,000 to the budget because we had money in there previously reserved for a kind of a shared services model. You're going to need to do a recruitment for a new town manager and public works director. So we have some one-town money built into that. We have about 25,000 for a sustainability coordinator to share those costs with San Anselmo. Council, as you previously discussed at your joint meeting, you added 15,000 for a total of 50,000 for the ResJ budget, added 8,000 to the Climate Action Committee for its activities. So that increased from 2 to 10. Our medical and health is always projected to go up about 6%. On the plus side, retirement and our unfunded liabilities actually decreased by about 275,000. And that was due to the refinancing action the council took, I think, last year. And as I had previously reported under that slide for professional services actually almost go up by a little over 380,000 or almost 10%. And most of that is related a lot to different planning studies, mainly the housing element, because that envisions possibly doing the EIR. So we had the budget for that. And our fire contract, our contribution increased by about 4%. So good news, it looks like general fund reserves will still remain healthy at year end. Beginning of year, it's about 1.16 million or almost 40% of operating expenses. At the end of the fiscal year 21-22, we're projecting reserves about 3.8, almost 33% of operating expenses, well above the council's 25% of operating expenses minimum reserve requirement. And it looks like we'll dip into your general fund reserves by about 360,000. But again, that's really for all one-time expenses. So in the 5-year capital improvement program for this coming year, it's a quite an ambitious program, about 5.4 million. You'll see the council allocated about 1.1 million for road maintenance improvement projects. Of that, 400,000 is a lot for road maintenance and repairs, about 1.35 million for bridges. The pavilion project right now is looked to cost about 2.6 million for the seismic retrofit project. You have 120,000 budgeted for sidewalk repair, including the downtown area, and about 140,000 available for park trail improvements and town facility improvements, and 100,000 budget for storm drain. These numbers, the 5.4 million, reflect the council direction at your workshop, which was to add 225,000 for road improvements, 100,000 for a kitchen in the pavilion, basically the renovation to a warming kitchen, and another 20,000 for trail improvements. So that brought that number up to a total of 70,000 for pedestrian trail improvements. So what we also touch on normally is we touch on a 5-year forecast. In this case, the 5-year forecast, if you take a look, it looks like 3 years out, council is going to need to take a look at fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 to maybe, if you want things to match or if they're one-time expenses or so on, some adjustments. It's really less than, it's about 1.5%, maybe 2% of your actually operating expenses. So that should be pretty easy to adjust at council as you get there. This assumes that there aren't any major changes to our current spending patterns. We made some adjustments for the one-time expenditures in 22-23 and some other adjustments based on known costs, like if there's an election that year or some other things, vehicle replacement and so on. But you can see you have some time to figure some things out in the future. General fund forecast of revenues, it's actually fairly modest. Sales tax, I think, not sales tax, but property tax, I think is going up by, we project an average of little less than 4% a year. I think 3.75% a year. Sales tax probably goes up by 2 to 3% depending on the sales tax consultants' projections. And you can see some of the other numbers, have some slight increases in them. So it's kind of modest over the 5-year period. And how this really compares when you compare revenues to expenditures, as you can see, revenues probably go up by a little over 3% over this 5-year period. And expenses kind of match it, some years more, some years less. So it's looking good from this perspective, assuming, again, that our revenue assumptions continue to be accurate, and same with our expenditure assumptions. But with that pretty much is the brief staff report on the budget. Normally conduct your budget hearing, get feedback from the public, provide any additional direction to staff, and then we come back to you with your budget on consideration of the budget at your July 7th meeting. So with that, I think I need to stop screen share. Okay. So with that, that's the conclusion of the staff report.
Bruce, you're still on mute.
Barbara, go ahead.
I have 2 questions. I had sent some questions earlier that staff answered. So thank you for all that. One question is, can we post your presentation on the website? I think that will be helpful. But the second question, there was something that came up at the budget workshop, which I know we don't have fleshed out and may not be workable, but I made a suggestion about the possibility of renting a facility in town to at least provide some relief when the pavilion is closed for the 8 months. And I'm sure that hasn't been worked out and may not work out. But I'm wondering, is that something we should add to the budget as a possibility, or wait for a budget adjustment if it does become possible?
That's a cooling center? Is that what you mean? Or
No, it's not a cooling center. The pavilion has all these classes, and when we close it for 8 months,
okay.
you may recall I brought up one possibility, which is probably the only one in town. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, so normally I would suggest we wait just to see. Generally, we don't want to budget something based on showing someone what you think some space is worth to rent. So we would probably wait on that, see if it's available. We have to figure out the classes that could be in there, the revenue generated, and so on, which should cover hopefully whatever the cost of rent is. So we have that. We'll make sure that's in the narrative of what we're going to explore. But I think that would probably be an adjustment when we come to that point.
Okay, thank you very much. That sounds like a great approach.
Vice Mayor Hellman?
Yeah, I don't have too much because this is a lot of what we already looked at. And I love the presentation. And so, yeah, I think if we can make that public. The 5.4 million for CIP, is there any assumption, or what can you share with us as far as what is eligible, what share of the 5.4 is eligible for rescue relief funds? Any of it?
For right now, it's just the storm drain improvement. So we have 100,000 budget for storm drain improvements, and that's an eligible expense under the American Rescue Act. I think when we have that workshop, we'll have a little more information, and then we'll be able to determine if there's anything else. But I know you can't use it for matching funds. That's very clear.
Okay. And then I just want to confirm your 5-year projections. There's no assumptions for things like TOT or anything like that. That's like an analysis that's underway right now, right?
You mean like short-term rental income? Yeah, no, we didn't build that in. I think in the past, when we were looking at other revenue sources, we said that'd be something to explore. But no, that doesn't envision, that's not included in this budget. But obviously, whenever we do a short-term rental ordinance, then that'd be something that can be included in.
Okay. And then final question is, I was just curious because real estate has been so strong, what the assumptions are as far as growth for real estate. Do you know, or is Michael around? Yeah, Michael's on. Yeah,
Michael may know. I think normally it's probably more right now, more than 4%. I think we normally use a more conservative 4 or 3.75. I think for projection purposes, I might have used 3.75. So it varies year to year, but Michael can chime in on that.
The county gives us a monthly estimate of what their revenues are going to be from property taxes. It has been consistently going up month to month. I anticipate it will continue to project higher than what we've put in. But I'm not going to exceed what they've told me.
Sure.
So the real estate market continues to be very hot. And I don't see something on the horizon yet that's going to cool the prospects of property taxes continuing to be higher based on sales and, those sorts of activities that end up increasing our property tax revenues.
So you get a monthly forecast, you don't get an annual forecast, and then you plug in a conservative estimate based on that?
Right. The county gives us a monthly estimate at the end of each month of where property taxes are projected to head.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goddard?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the presentation, Garrett. Very clear. It's a process question, actually. Mayor, did you want us to talk about any of the things that we might feel are missing at this point or after the public hearing?
Usually we just try to stay with questions before the public hearing so that we hear the public's thoughts before we give our own. So I think I would go with that.
So great. I will hold off.
Any other clarifications or questions from council members before we go to the public hearing? Or the public hearing in this case. Okay. Madam Clerk, if you would open the public hearing, I believe that's the right thing to say at this point. Public comment on this topic, but this is actually a public hearing.
Yep. If you want to open the public hearing, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll
Okay.
manage public comments.
I will open the public hearing on the budget item, the fiscal year 2021 proposed operating and capital improvement budget.
Thanks. If any members of the public have comments on this item, now is your chance to raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands raised. Oh, I am seeing one. And that is Mark Bell. You are unmuted now.
Thanks, Michelle. So in looking at the packet, when I was looking through things, I saw that there was $20,000 designated for, I guess, clearing the paths, like from the hill down to the lowlands that have, there are a lot of paths. I know it took Mallory like several years to finally get that path cleared, but I'm just wondering why it's only 20,000 for saving people's lives, and then you all ran on this, platform of, fire danger is real, we have to have a plan, etc. And if the pathways aren't clear, I think people are going to die, and yet you have $50,000 for the ResJ committee, and you have 20,000 for having these paths cleared for people to escape with their lives, and I'm having trouble balancing that out. I'm sure there would be other things if I spent more time studying it, but that's the first thing that came to mind, and I was really disheartened to see your I guess you don't think that people's lives are worthwhile. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mark.
Are there any other public comments? Oh, yes. Jane Richardson Mack, followed by Joe McGarry. Jane, you might have to unmute yourself. There.
I'm sorry, I can't see in the budget anything about the police budget, or maybe I'm just not reading it correctly. Is that part of this discussion, or is that something that comes up later? Is there extra money being given to the police department? Are you taking any money away from them for any reason? It's not clear to me. Maybe I'm just not reading it correctly. So if you could clarify that, I would be grateful. But I would say in advance, I am not in favor of taking any money away from the police department. And I would agree with Mark Bell. It seems more important to make clear pathways for people to get out of town than give more money to the ResJ committee at this time, since they seem to be in a bit of a shambles. People are resigning, and personally, I was really vilified on air, and I don't appreciate that. So I think it might be time to just kind of stop that and think about them later. We have a fire season on us, very important, urgent, as a matter of fact. Whereas the ResJ committee, whatever they haven't come up with an explanation of what they've done with the money so far. So giving them more money at this time, I think is not a good idea, not wise, as the council members of our entire town, not just the ResJ committee people and their sympathizers. Thank you.
So just to be clear, the police budget starts on page 30 in the actual budget. There are other mentions of police in the beginning part, but it starts on page 30.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Joe McGarry, followed by Eve Chrysanth, followed by Frank Egger. Joe, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, just to answer Jane for a second, I think the overall spend of the police department has dropped, but that's due solely to the refinancing of the pensions. But in terms of personnel cost and operations, there's been an increase this year over last. So that kind of segues into, I went and watched, it was about a year ago at the June 3rd meeting, and it was the first meeting after the murder of George Floyd by police, and it happened to be the introduction of the budget for last year, and there were some words there that then Mayor Goddard said, and now Vice Mayor Hellman somewhat echoed, of like, what action can I take? And so in terms of police, and in response to the murder of George Floyd and the 1,000 other police killings since George Floyd, I asked council, what action have you taken to examine the possibility that racism, bias, and profiling exists within the Fairfax Police Department? And not what committee or subcommittee you have formed who will take action, but what have you done? Not what private conversations have you had, but once again, what have you done? Not what racial equity work have you embarked upon, but what steps have you done to ensure that the Fairfax Police is not policing people of color in a different way than it is policing white people? Because to the public, it appears that there literally has not been anything done since those heartfelt statements on June 3rd about looking into the possibility of racism in the police department. There was some, almost to the contrary, there was some, defensive statements from council that, this isn't Fairfax, or this isn't Portland, this isn't Minneapolis, this isn't Los Angeles, and I think it was intended to, to say that the police in Fairfax aren't violent, but really, I think what it was saying was we're whiter. And those cities had gone through growth in their Black communities, and there became a threat to the ruling white class. And police, in response, as they were founded to do, reacted with violence. So as we work towards equity in the town, which I fully, wholeheartedly believe you are, and with that diversity, I just want to caution you that without addressing policing, you're setting up possible harm. Once there's a certain amount of population who are of color, you run the risk of police, the institution of policing, reacting in violent ways as they've been trained to do. And that could be deadly. So I ask that you really revisit your spendings this year with the police department. And I want to advocate for the policy of defunding the police as laid out by the Movement for Black Lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
The next speaker is Eva Chrysanth, followed by Frank Egger, followed by Patrice. So Eva, I've unmuted you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate Joe McGarry's comments. I actually see the situation slightly differently. I think all those points are valid. I don't disagree with them. But I think you have a little bit of a tiger at your door. We are here in the Western states facing an unprecedented drought, one that is projected to last possibly many years. We are also beset by global warming. Our farmland in the Central Valley is facing a massive crisis. Our state is in much more trouble than we know. Meanwhile, all up and down the state of California and across the country, we are seeing police budgets increase. it's hard to justify that when we've had 4 years of massive fires. It's pretty obvious the money needs to move from the police budget into the fire budget. The money needs to move, from the police budget into services that will actually finally rehouse the leftover people from even just the Tubbs fire. I mean, it's many of these families that were displaced by the fires are still homeless. And if you want to see something scary, go up to Chico and meet some of the families that are still unhoused after those fires, and come back and tell me that you need an increase in your police budget. This isn't just you. I get it. I mean, every municipality, every county, whether it's their sheriff or it's the police, our elected representatives are faced with incredible pressure from our friendly police officers and our friendly sheriffs. But this is not the time to bend. This is a time to make sensible, moves away from our way overfunded police and into fire. And lastly, I'd point out that now that we're finally leaving Afghanistan after, decades of muddling around in there, we're going to have an awful lot of military equipment coming back into the United States, and that's going to go to police departments. It's terrifying to think what they're going to be doing with that as we face an unprecedented crisis of global warming. So plan wisely, and I wish you courage, because I know the police unions are terrifying. Thank you.
Thank you, Reba.
The next speaker is Frank Eggert, followed by Patrice, followed by Mimi Newton. And Frank, you're unmuted now.
Thank you, Michelle. Frank Eggert, Meadoway.
Hello, Frank.
Fairfax's current transit occupancy tax was renamed hotel users tax in 1997. But in the definition, a house, room, or unit in an existing structure rented for less than 30 days is covered and taxable at 10%. Airbnb and HomeAway must provide Fairfax with their records of short-term rentals. That's a First District Court of Appeals decision. So there are probably at least a dozen short-term rental operations going on in California, and you have, as a town council, as a town, we have a right to see those proceeds and to know how much tax we're losing on that. Also, Fairfax is losing affordable housing to short-term rentals, and we're in such dire straits to keep our affordable housing here in Fairfax for local workers who are making under 50,000 a year. It's important that we not lose we not lose affordable housing and short-term rentals. So it was interesting on the Fairfax Police Department budget. The Fairfax Police Department, it is not a racist police department. In fact, the Fairfax Police Department under former Chief Morin met or exceeded all of former State Attorney General Becerra's 8 required benchmarks for police practices. The Fairfax police budget is a bare minimum to cover the town. If we have to evacuate Deer Park or the Cascades or Manor Hill, it's going to be our police department that's going to be in charge of the evacuation. Our firefighters are going to be fighting the fires, and our police officers are going to be doing the evacuation. We barely have 2 officers per shift around the clock, and this is not the time to reduce the police budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank.
The next speaker is Patrice, followed by Mimi Newton, followed by Jane Richardson Mack. And Patrice, you're unmuted now.
Where do I start? There's so much to say. I would just like to echo Frank Egger. This is not the time to be defunding our police department. They are running on a shoestring budget and doing an amazing job. And this is coming from someone who is a military brat, moved every 3 years her entire life as an African American. The whole time, believe it or not, we don't change colors like chameleons. And this is the best police department I have ever engaged with. Out of principle, I have never called the cops my entire life until I moved to Fairfax. And it's not because of the police. It's because of the community. My life has been threatened 3 times in the 2.5 years I've lived here. And I have to give complete kudos to the police department for taking my calls seriously. The fact that they've already lost $100,000 to ResJ, you want to take more? You want to make people like me feel unsafe while saying you're a woke town and you have this racial equity and social justice committee, to me, is the irony of all ironies. There's no sense to it. There's no logic to it. There's obviously agenda. Joe McGarry, I disagree with every single thing that you've said. Our police department scores higher on every equity point, every racial diversity point, every lack of force point. They don't even carry tasers. I just feel like everyone's out to get the police, and it's crap. These guys don't carry tasers. They're not here to harm the people. They're here to support the people. And I've seen it a lot, including when a dead crow was placed on my doorstep. I've seen it when I watched ResJ talk today, and they didn't mention the horrendous racial incidents that are happening at Naves. Like, people, wake up. This is not about defunding the police. This is about making our town better in the right ways, in the correct ways. And Bruce, having worked with you on ResJ, I know you're going to do the right thing. I know that your heart is in the right place. I respect you immensely, and I just don't want you to fall down this rabbit hole with a lot of other people who think that just because Minneapolis is burning, Fairfax needs to as well. We have a great police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice.
Next speaker is Mimi Newton, followed by Jane Richardson Mack, followed by Deborah Benson. Mimi, you're unmuted now.
Hey, thanks, you guys. Mimi Newton, Fairfax. I want to echo the previous speakers in terms of my support for the Fairfax PD. This should not be a question of pitting the fire department against the police department. We're going to need both of these forces to be robust. We've already put stresses on the police department over the past year. And if we want to talk about fair housing, I don't think reducing the police department budget when workers like police and fire can't really afford to live here. And again, I just want to keep pounding home the idea that we need to support our town workers and their ability to be able to live and make a decent wage, and help to make the conditions better for them to be able to live here. The comment about the military equipment, I didn't really understand because, we had dealt with that issue years ago, I think. And, it turned out that any out-of-date military equipment just wound up costing us more money than it was worth in terms of, I think, disposing of it at the end of the day. And we had made some policy decisions, if I recall correctly, basically not wanting to go there with respect to the Fairfax PD taking any kind of surplus military equipment. So I don't think we're going to let that happen. Maybe somebody has a better recollection about that than I do. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Mimi.
The next speaker is Jane Richardson Mack, or possibly John, followed by Deborah Benson. And Jane or John, you're unmuted.
Hello, it's John, Fairfax resident, John Romatis. I just would like to voice my support for not defunding the police in any form. And I would also voice my support for not providing the ResJ committee with any more money. The police, people say, you hear, oh, well, we do have a race, we sure that our police force isn't racist and this and that, and it's like these random false premises, right? Do we? I mean, it's again, we're repeating the same, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, there's bad police forces. I'm sure lots of bad police officers. However, I've seen no proof that we have any of those. And so there's this, I believe there's a very vocal minority who are just pushing an agenda, and they don't care. They don't care about the reality of the situation. Anyways, I'll digress. I want to talk about the budget. So back to the budget. I don't think that the ResJ committee is doing well. In fact, if anybody watches the ResJ committee and the subsequent PPPSA committees, they'll see that it's kind of a failing effort. And I think that we really need something concrete, some concrete, I don't know, not evidence, but something showing that it's working. Because what I've seen is people dropping out. As a matter of fact, before this meeting, one of the members resigned. Vice Mayor Hellman, so I don't mean to call you out, but you are not on the committee anymore, and you were a champion for it. So, I mean, there's all these things to me say, hey, something's not working. And it's like, do we want to dysfunctional? Yeah, somewhat dysfunctional, but do we want to start putting more money into that? I mean, what are we getting out of it is my question. And it doesn't look like we're getting much out of it, but a bunch of divisive behavior between some of the public and some of the members. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
The next speaker is Deborah Benson. And you're unmuted now.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Council, for hearing me. I want to voice my full support for our Fairfax police. They're not overfunded. They are funded barely well enough to function in their 24/7 mode, which is what we were promised when we voted for the alphabet tax. As far as the funding of the ResJ committee, I agree with John that what have they accomplished? And I'm curious about something. In this last budget workshop, it's been represented that the council gave them $15,000 in addition to the $34,000 that they have left over. But it's been my experience that at the end of a fiscal year, any leftover funds do not carry forward in the department or the committee. They're reabsorbed back into the whole. So in effect, are we saying that the ResJ has been funded basically with $50,000 in this fiscal year's budget, which I take great offense to. The part of the problem is the premise, the basic premise in regards to the police, that we have a dysfunctional or a faulty police department. Nothing concrete has been pointed out. We have one of the most diverse police departments that exist, most likely, who act fairly, who watch out for our town. And I have not seen anyone point to specific acts by any members of our police that have gone against the grain, are unfair, inequitable, or racist. I think the same premise holds true for the committee, in that they're wanting to make Fairfax a non-racist town. Well, I don't see where we have been pointed out in specifics as being a racist town. So Another question, how many times can a committee or a subcommittee not convene and still remain a subcommittee? The PPPSA subcommittee has canceled at least 3 times because of lack of attendance. So in the end, I fully support our police. Do not take any more money from them. They need more than we're giving them as it is. And have a second thought about funding any more for this ResJ committee. I do not see what they have accomplished. So thank you very much for hearing me.
The next speaker is Richard Ethelbaum, and you are now unmuted, Richard.
Thank you. Regarding the agenda item that you're all about to vote on now with the budget matter at hand, obviously just as a layman citizen, I can't really understand the fine nuances of how this is different or similar to past years and what's appropriate. I would just as a general comment, I would echo others that have talked about the concern with the drought and climate change, and just that we remain in a high fire risk. And I would just hope that we are at least prioritizing whatever kind of resources we can to help in any way mitigate, prepare, have something, tools, whatever, make a decision. So that's just a general comment. And I'm by no means the expert. I'm not even a member of Rethink, but I just want to say that I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding on the folks that are talking about defund the police. They're connected to a sort of national movement and a way of thinking that's about a paradigm shift. And it's not specifically about the specifics of Fairfax Police today, although I don't want to speak for them or anybody else in town. But I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings about where some folks are going. And there are some pretty probing analysis and discussions that are going on around the country in different pockets, and not just in academia, in different communities that are talking about the whole sort of inception of police in the first place. And so I think we want to feel safe, and we want to feel like we've got the right resources to take care of us and to do things that we need to do. But there is a movement in this country, and they're in this town as well, that is seeing things in a different way, in a new way. And that's really what they're saying. And so it's concerning for folks when they believe this. These are their values, and these are ideas that they have that can't just be dismissed. It's not an attack on Fairfax PD per se. It's a paradigm shift in a way of thinking that they have. And they're saying they get concerned when they look at a budget and they see a certain allotment that's going to police, when their fundamental values are saying, I want to deal with these things in a different way. I want to reallocate resources in a different way. I want some fresh thinking. It's not just about what's happening here. Although I have seen things posted that talk about inequities, about how many people are stopped or sent to the DA in county, and people of color more so, and whatever. And I don't know all of it. I'm not the one to speak for all of that. I just would like to provide a little bit of a balance that I think that there's some misrepresentations, and we sort of have some fundamental differences about paradigms. And I don't know if that's something that could be addressed today. And I don't know, obviously budget's a sensitive area because it's the money thing. So, my issue, like many, is just I want to feel safe, particularly around the fire drought stuff. But I think there's a broader discussion, and I'll repeat again, since the ResJ is taking a lot of hits tonight. They've had some growing pains, but I still think there's tremendous value in it. And I hope that everybody doesn't quit the committee and hang in there. And there's some good work that can happen in the long run. It's going to be for the best of all. It's really about getting dialogue going, just even creating awareness, and having some discussion in the first place, and folks saying, well, I'm not racist, or they're taking things too personally. And it's not about who you are in your heart. It's about entrenched systematic things that need some looking at and moving forward. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you.
The next speaker is Veronica Garretts, and you are unmuted now.
Hello, my name is Ilo, and I just want to support reallocating more funds to the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brian Poindexter, and you are unmuted.
Thanks. Hello, Town Council. I also just want to echo some of the things that Rich was saying. I think there's been this false dichotomy or false association maybe between the work that ResJ is doing and some sort of relationship with the police budget. To my knowledge, ResJ has not recommended a reduction of the police budget at all since they've been formed, nor are they being funded directly from police budget. They're being funded from the general town budget. So the association or the equation of these two things just seems false to me. And I think it's steering us in the wrong direction. I would also add, just having listened to ResJ and PPPSA subcommittee meetings, that some of the folks who are claiming that not much is being done are also the ones trying to slow down progress in a number of different ways. So it feels pretty disingenuous to have those folks come on and say we should suspend these committees because they're not effective, when the part of the reason that progress is being slowed down is their very vocal and consistent actions to stall progress. So I think what we need actually to see whether these committees can produce something is a constructive environment, is one in which people coordinate and participate in the process and give it a legitimate shot and see what can be done in this town. I think there's a hopeful way of viewing the outputs and the work that those committees are doing. And I really would love to invite people to see it that way as well. I think part of that process starts with funding. Let's give our ResJ committee members a little bit of runway to at least complete the process that they've started. So I think that's important. And then I'll just echo everything that people have said about fire season. I would say as a citizen, that's just at the top of my list of personal concerns. It's just been hot already this year to a degree that we've not seen. It's been dry. And I really am concerned about what's happening with fire. I'd like to see more budget to it, whether it's funding citizen action or whether it's funding firefighters for kind of putting out fires. That's definitely a priority for me. And I just want to echo some of the smarter comments that have been made on that prior to my time. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. We have a hand raised from someone who has already spoken at this public hearing, Mr. Mayor. I will let you make that call. You're muted.
Sorry. I would ask that person if it's actually another person who's using the same phone line, then you can speak, but if not, please, you just need to lower your hand because you've already spoken. So, and we appreciated your comments earlier. I guess let's go ahead and see whether it's the same person, but Michelle.
All right, you are unmuted now, Patrice.
I'd like to speak on behalf of my dog Azalea, who is a Fairfax resident.
You can't do that, Patrice.
Well, I just wanted to say in response to what Richard said, I think that people are misinformed because the budget isn't transparent. $100,000 came out of the police budget to support ResJ specifically, and he misinterpreted that. Thanks, Bruce.
We can clarify that. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see any more hands raised. If you want to close the public hearing.
So we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. And I know that there will be some, in response to a number of those comments, there'll be some clarifications. I'll offer one quickly, may not be the only one I offer, but I'll just start with one really simple one. There is, for everybody's information, there is a supplemental staff report, which is the budget. It's the budget narrative, I believe it's called, Garrett, that Garrett always does an excellent job of these, and this year is no exception. So that is a supplemental staff report that you can find on the web. And it's very helpful reading. And one of the things you'll see in that is that with regard to the pedestrian trail improvements, $20,000 was added to the funding for trail improvements, bringing it from $50,000 to $70,000 in the capital improvements projects. So it's not the case that we're only allocating $20,000 to trail improvements. We're actually allocating $70,000.
I see.
I'm sure other people have further clarifications.
Yeah, can we just go to page 76? Because I'd like to understand, there's miscellaneous park and trail improvements at 114. So is that, can we get a breakout of what that is to support trails?
Garrett?
Yeah, so how it works for trails, and sorry, I'm just trying to turn to the page. So we have 70,000 budgeted for pedestrian trail improvements. And how it works is in the one thing that calls miscellaneous park and trails, how it works is that there's 25,000 budgeted here in Measure F special muni funds and another 45,000 budgeted in Measure A park funds, and that's on a different page. But this page in the CIP has a note on the bottom to explain that. And the only reason we have to do that is because for Measure A park funds, the county requirement is that we keep the funds in a separate account and then transfer it in when it's used. So that's why we just we have it on two separate pages for audit purposes. But it's a total of 70,000 for pedestrian trail improvements.
To be clear, Garrett, the rest of the money, that's 89,272, is for other park improvements. So that's why you don't see a 45K in there. When we did the work plan, which we approved tonight and is also in this budget, it shows you the breakdown of the other park stuff. There was something about Perry Park, new exercise equipment, and something else, reimbursing for some of the equipment we bought, something like that.
Yeah, swing replacement, you're right. Swing replacement, some seed money for pump track, and then Perry Park.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other council comments, questions? Yes, Chance?
I have two clarifications, and then I have an additional comment. But I don't know if this is the right time, if we're still doing clarifications and things like that, or more questions. But
where we do it, yeah.
Yep. First thing is regarding the transit occupancy tax. I just wanted to make the public aware that that was established as a town priority for the year. One of the town goals that the council came up with at our town council retreat in March. And the other thing, I just wanted staff to clarify for the public. I understand that there are advocates with varying opinions about the police budget, but just if the staff could clarify how we approach the police budget as it is currently presented. It seems like there's some concern that there's an ongoing effort to defund, and that might be in the budget, or that there's ResJ money, but just wanting to be clear about that. If you could clarify that, Garrett, and also clarify this question about monies that have been held over from a prior budget for ResJ, so the public can understand how that works. I know open space and other funds or kitties have money that is held over as well, but if you could clarify those two things real quick. And then I have one final thing I'd like to say too. Okay,
so the PD budget actually is a budget that reflects the current service levels for PD, which in essence is one full-time dispatcher 24/7 and a minimum of 2 officers on duty 24/7. So the budget actually reflects that. The reason, if you look at the budget, the reason that it's actually lower than previous years is, again, because I believe one of the speakers pointed out, is when the council refinanced our unfunded pension liabilities, they actually reduced our overall pension costs. And what we do is we spread that among the departments. And since PD represents about half well, not quite half, but like a third of the town budget, what happens is it gets a prorated share of the savings. So that's why their liability costs are so much lower, which in essence results in a budget that looks lower than previous years, but in essence, it still maintains the same service levels and includes any added costs for added software costs for new reporting systems and so on. So PD is same, and the same for fire. I heard some people talk about fire. We are part of Fire JPA, And all the members, we have fully funded fire and our contribution, again, to maintain the current service levels of Ross Valley Fire. And the budget actually has $136,000 that we spend annually for vegetation management. And those are things to actually reduce the fire hazards within town and on town-owned properties.
I think just to add to that on fire, remember the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is another JPA that includes the county and all cities in town except Tiburon and Belvedere, do what's called core projects throughout all our member jurisdictions, a lot of which happens in Fairfax. And then we do get a certain allocation of those monies as well. I think it's about 96,000. So just to be clear, I know we call fire our fire department, but MWPA is a nice add-on to that. And we're starting our second fiscal year.
Okay. Chance, I believe you said you had something else you wanted to.
And then if Garrett could also clarify the holdover money from ResJ, just so that is clear for the public as well.
Yes, how it's really called is we're really in essence rebudgeting it. So we're carrying it over. So every year it is true, the council looks at it. And if there's money left over, what happens is it doesn't automatically go over. The council has to rebudget it to the next fiscal year. So for ResJ, if the budget was $100,000 in the current fiscal year, and the organization spent $65,000, there's $35,000 remaining. So in essence, what the council did, it rebudgeted that 35, added 15 for a total of $50,000 in the fiscal year 21-22 budget.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I hope that clarifies things for the public. The one thing that I wanted to raise pertains to the American Rescue Plan monies. We have yet to have a workshop to discuss how we're going to use those monies. However, while the council hasn't really worked through a lot of those things, there is an MCCMC subcommittee on homelessness that has worked across the county to come up with the funding structure to increase funding for case management for homelessness and for our unhoused community in Marin. And the expectation is that some of those monies would come out of the American Rescue Plan monies. San Rafael and Novato, which take up the lion's share along with the county, have already passed the budgets that include those monies. And there was an IJ story about it. And we actually know, I think Garrett also knows, that there is, an actual number. It's about $33,322 that we already know is being requested of Fairfax for our share of the $2 million total across the county to fund additional caseload management so we can deal with or help unhoused folks and get them support. And so I was hoping that we'd be able to let that be reflected at least as one item in our budget, because I'm concerned that we're not going to have our budget workshop before the meeting where we will ultimately pass this in July. But I want to make sure that that we are supporting that effort, and that the other towns and communities that are already stepping up to support that effort are aware that we're joining with them to support our unhoused community in Fairfax and beyond in Marin County. So I just wanted to offer that as a friendly edit to this, since that's the one funding piece that's really worked out as it relates to American Rescue Plan money around the county.
And if I may, Mayor, can I just piggyback on that a little bit? Councilmember Catrano and myself serve on that MCCMC subcommittee on homelessness. And we are receiving 115 new housing vouchers. Half of them may be able to be allocated by mid-July. What those housing vouchers require services and case management that go with each and every one of those vouchers, because we all know that just providing housing and our housing first model really does require the wraparound services. So this is sort of, the timing on this is of the essence. And as we're budgeting, I think it's always important, same way I feel about our support for the ResJ, is that our budgeting really reflects our values. And in this situation, things that are important cause some discomfort, but this one I feel is important for us to lift up, if you will, and make sure that we're able to make some form of a promise to the county, who is matching the funds 100%. Each of the cities and towns' contributions. Ours is, as Chance said, it's 33,373. So I would like to echo my support for passing that, or coming to agreement that would come back to us in our final budget.
That's actually scheduled for July 7th. But if your direction is just put it on the sheet, that's fine.
What's scheduled for July 7th?
On mute.
The consideration of the town of Fairfax's contribution to this countywide effort, the 33,000, that's scheduled to come to the council, because you need council approval, actually, of it on July 7th. But if the direction is you want to add something that's just reflected on this federal stimulus sheet, that's fine. I mean, we could add the storm drains on there too, but ultimately, you'll have a different type of worksheet and how it all looks ultimately when you figure out how to spend the 1.8 million.
Okay, well, I would support putting that down immediately, and of course, at the will of the rest of the council. And if I may, I wanted to add one other thing. We discussed, and I'm not sure that Garrett actually captured this, and I know it didn't show up in the budget. At our workshop, we talked about the NRG coordinator, the Neighborhood Response Group coordinator. We were previously paying $5,000 to Amy Flynn to coordinate that program. She has stepped away, and I had requested $10,000 in the budget in order to hire someone to do the comprehensive job, and then to work more directly with the Ross Valley Fire Department's emergency preparedness hire, which is in process, should be complete in July, so that we can start our community emergency preparedness committee that we all approved last month. So if at your pleasure, I would like to propose that we add that 10,000 for that NRG coordinator.
Don't we, I just want to add, don't we have a page for the disaster prep work? And I can't remember how much is in there. 5, so can we add 10 to that page? You're on mute.
We have 5 budgeted for the NRG. If I understand correctly, I think Councilmember Goddard's requesting 5 more.
Yeah, I think when we started that program, remember, it was a part-time deal that I think we thought was going to be 6 months. I think what she's asking for is a year. So if we can make it 10, and I'm in agreement with the idea of putting the 33K, whatever the amount is, under the federal ARP, ARA, I'm not sure what it's called. We should put that down. And I mean, remember, the county got 50 million is getting 50 million. I think Nevada's getting something like 16 million, and San Rafael's getting 23 million. We're getting a lot for our little town. That I think that's great. So I think that would be a good move. I'm in support of that.
As am I.
Thank you.
Oh, Stephanie, did you have your hand up?
I just said as am I. I support it as well.
Yeah. Renee.
I just had one other thing, and I think this may overlap with our item number 5 that we're taking up at the end, but not specifically. So I'm wondering, in past years, we have budgeted funding for our own town-funded chipper days. I know that we have 2 chipper days that are being paid for out of the MWPA funds. I've spoken with Rich Shorthall, and so I'm not advocating at this time that we actually put aside funding for our own days, but and the report I have is that the MWPA chipper days to date, which have been contracted through FireSafe Marin, Fairfax has had the highest participation levels. Nonetheless, I feel as though we could do a lot more in terms of promoting these chipper days, make sure that we get the most possible use out of them. So I don't know if we need to have any funding allocated toward perhaps some kind of banners, just bumped up promotion to make sure that people know, because they do have to sign up in order to participate in the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how that would look, or if that's something that can be leveraged through our funds through MWPA.
Yeah, normally in the budget, you don't get specific as to buying a banner. We have 136,000 allocated for those type of activities. So if you wanted a banner, it would just come out of that. But we wouldn't specifically list every little thing that we'd be doing in the budget. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just didn't know if there was that fund for those types of purposes. And also, Rich did share that that FireSafe Marin was looking into getting banners so that the whole county can promote more widely.
Just to clarify, it's not 2 chipper days, it's 2 chipper days per area.
Right.
So it's many chipper days. And MWPA has funded FireSafe Marin very hefty, and they do incredible work. So I believe that's part of the funding we're allocating to them for a lot of their education and outreach. Already some of the banners and stuff. I may be incorrect, but we continue to up their budget because they do such a great job.
Yeah, I think just to finish this, my concern is that when we have had the town funded days, we've had the pickup trucks that go through the neighborhoods, and for those who don't sign up, they can still put their things out on the curb, and those pickup trucks and the young folks that are hired, it gets picked up. With the MWPA funded chipper days, you have to make an appointment. So I'm trying to ascertain if it's as well used, given the extra requirement of this signing up and registering. But I think we should give it a try this year because they are doing an excellent job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I hadn't, thank you for clarifying that difference. I guess I knew it, but hadn't really thought about it that way, that's the transition that's happening. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we could, through maybe any extra funding, try to get the MWPA chipper day people to pick up vegetation that's put out without being signed up. I don't know, because that's
not how the program works. And I know they will go through the neighborhoods and maybe pick some up, but that's not how the program works. And in the past, they focused on Firewise communities, and they're wanting to focus on all areas this time. But Garrett wants to add something.
So I think I probably should have been a little more specific. So the money that we budget are placeholder funds for activities that could include additional chipper days within Fairfax. Part of what we're waiting for is we're waiting to see how effective the MWPA program is in town and how well it's received and how they're doing, and then determine if we need to come back in with a chipper day in targeted areas, whether it's pickup or whatever, just to clean up and do some more things. The last thing we wanted to do is we didn't want to create confusion of we have one, they have one, and then people get mixed up with what they're going to do and how they do it. And so that's what we're waiting for. But that's why we have ample funds budgeted to be able to do that later. A lot of it is just we're waiting to see. They started in May. It's June. Let's wait and see how effective it is, and then we can figure out what we need to do for local chipper days.
Okay, just one clarification. So when this came to MWPA, I asked specifically if we wanted to allocate additional money, can it be done through Fire Safe Marin rather than setting up a separate program we hire people? And the answer is absolutely yes, and they prefer it that way because they're really organized. They have the system set up. So it would be a good idea to really talk to Mark Brown or Rich Shortall, but they anticipated that they would try to do it all through extra funding contracted separately through them. And I think that may be the most efficient way to go, but there may be other ways too.
Renee,
I just had one last thing to say if no one else is speaking.
please do.
I just want to send my thanks. I want to send so much gratitude to Michael Vivrette for the work on this budget. And Garrett, I can't say enough. I really can't, but I do want to just point out to the public this very simple fact, and that is that, so I've been here for 8 years and 2 months, and you've been here for almost 8.5. And each year at budgeting, we look at our reserves, and this is the first year that it's come down below 37, and it's come to potentially 33. That is an outstanding job at keeping this town so fiscally sound, more so than any other town, city in Marin County, certainly. So that's much to your credit in your work and partnering with Michael. Michael, thank God you're staying. But Garrett, just profound gratitude for keeping this town so sturdily afloat. We will miss you terribly.
Can I just add something? I did cry when I read the last budget message, and just was glad to see that you still had the keep smiling, which you always put on the budget. And really being behind Renee by 1 month. We've been on this together for quite a while and seen some pretty tumultuous times, but really the finances have been in great hands with Michael Vivrette, his team, and you, Garrett, leading the helm. So this is, and again, something David Weinsoff used to say is thank you for making the budget as transparent as possible. And I know you continue to strive for that, and Michael continues to strive for that with his team. Budgets are not easy to read, but this one is pretty easy in comparison to others I've read.
Well, I will offer my heartfelt thanks as well to Garrett and to Michael and his team, as Barbara said. I just so appreciate that is not one thing that we have to worry about in this town, is the money slipping through our fingers. We really have such a solid team working this, and Garrett, I will miss you. But you're not gone yet, so
I know, let's not
okay, you're still here.
let's not do this.
And I appreciate just tonight you're incredibly detailed and just the depth of knowledge that you have when we dig into one little part of the budget, and you've got all the details right at your fingertips. It's pretty awesome. Thank you. Is there anything more on the budget?
No.
So I think we've provided direction to staff. I don't think we need a motion or anything, right?
Okay.
No, we have your direction.
We've conducted our public hearing and we've discussed it and given direction. Thank you. I'll offer one comment just on the budget, which is that I'm not sure I really appreciate that we've got 25,000 as a placeholder in the budget for the shared position of a sustainability coordinator with San Anselmo, and San Anselmo is definitely interested in proceeding with that on their end. I'm not sure that's that, and I know that the investigation of the details of that is still to come. So we really don't know whether that's exactly the right figure. So I would see that as a placeholder as we investigate this. But if we concur, then that's just my comment on that. Nothing to be changed. Okay. Thank you. So I guess we will close that item and close the public hearing, or we already did that when we finished hearing from the public on it. And we can move on to item 10, which is the, well, I'll just ask Garrett to give us a staff report on that item.
Okay, so item 10 is your introduction and adoption of an urgency ordinance barring residential evictions due to impacts from public health emergency arising from COVID-19 virus through September 30th, 2021. Now, I should point out, the urgency ordinance does take a 4/5 vote of the council, and if it gets 4/5 of a vote, the ordinance takes effect immediately with its approval. So, in the background, it kind of describes the chronology of the rental eviction ordinance. Council members Goddard and Kohler had asked for this item to be added to the agenda, but maybe to cut through the chronology, basically where we're at is the state legislation to extend the protections to renters to not be evicted due to COVID-19 related financial reasons. That's actually slated to expire the end of this month. What this urgency ordinance does, it actually extends it through September 30, 2021, and that actually matches what the county of Marin they took action, I believe it was June 8th, the Board of Supervisors, to extend the provisions. So similar, like we said, to the county, the whole purpose of the ordinance is to prevent housing displacement due to the significant and ongoing impact from the COVID-19 pandemic. This ordinance prevents evictions of residential tenants for non-payment of rent that are related to loss of income from COVID-19. Again, extends it to September 2021. It pretty much mimics the provisions of the county ordinance. It prevents evictions and late fees for non-payment rent due to COVID-19. Again, we stated that. Now, one thing to point out is all the federal, state, and local rental assistance programs, those will also be extended through September 30, 2021 with this ordinance. So that's a good fit for matching the extension. And really, one of the last points we just have to point out is obviously this public health situation is a very fluid, dynamic situation. I think really staff may be reporting back, monitor the situation, may report back to the council from time to time if needed. If there's any changes or any recommended approaches that need to be made differently. But really the bottom line here is you're extending protections, renter protections to through December 30, 2021. And that's pretty much the staff report.
Any questions from council, clarifications? And then, yes, Renee?
Just a quick question. Could you explain, or perhaps Janet could explain, what is the process of an extension or extending an urgency ordinance? Should that need, or should we desire that?
Yeah, there are different kinds. You can extend this kind, the one you're doing right now, if you come up into September and you want to extend it. Presumably, though, it would be, you would want to do it via a regular ordinance. And if you think you may need to extend it, we could look at it earlier than an urgency.
Okay, so there's flexibility in extension.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So essentially each extension is an ordinance if we, as like this isn't it?
That's correct. And I think maybe Renee, where some of your confusion is coming in is in the land use urgency ordinance context, where you have 45 days, and then you have a 10-month and 11-day to make a year, or a year and 10 months and 11 days to make 2 years, because those type of urgency ordinances can only be extended for 2 years. That's what you're thinking about. That's not what this is.
Okay. Chance.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to clarify, Garrett, for members of the public, either present or ones who watch the recording. So it sounds like you're saying the federal, state, and local provisions will be extended to September as well. And so these programs are not oversubscribed. So somebody, if they are in need of rental assistance, could go to the county, for instance, and they would be able to get support currently, right? That's the appropriate place for them to go. Oh, you're muted.
You're
Sorry.
muted.
Same services, same place they've been getting it now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Barbara?
Just a clarification on Renee's question. Janet, I believe if we decided to extend this, you were saying something about a regular ordinance. I think potentially what we could do is something like what we did with just cause eviction. You may recall, Janet, you worked with us on doing an urgency ordinance at the same meeting as we did the first reading of the regular ordinance, so that that's correct, right? We did those two in tandem, and I think because, as Garrett says, this is a very fluid time, rather than starting something early, we won't know where we are maybe in July or August. It might be better to just sort of think about that. Is that workable, Janet? Because I recall us specifically doing that at a meeting together.
Yes, and why you do that, you sometimes it's belt and suspenders, and the reason why you do it is because if you're at all concerned about your findings for urgency, you back it up with a regular ordinance that takes 2 reads in 30 days. Here, I don't believe there's any concern about the urgency findings, and so we didn't provide you with a regular ordinance to back it up, because we also see it as being potentially a temporary need, not something that would go on longer than a few months.
Okay, so just to follow up, in early September, if we think this is going to continue to be a huge issue, we could just extend or do a new urgency ordinance rather than starting early with something, because I think we need to wait as long as possible to kind of see where things go.
Yes, what we would do is bring back a new urgency ordinance with new urgency findings, detailing the changed conditions. Something like there's been a resurgence of the pandemic, God forbid, and something like that needs new circumstances and needs a new ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no other questions or clarifications, we'll go to public comment. Michelle, if you would open that, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to. I see 2 people with their hands raised. The first is Richard Applebaum. Next is Kathy, followed by Liesel. And Richard, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I appreciate that final clarification that you could extend the urgency ordinance again when it expires. But I think for the very reasons that were highlighted, that some of those other things that are happening county, statewide are all going to wrap up in September. And if you weren't aware, anyone who's on PUA or whatever PUA has evolved into as far as unemployment insurance that Biden extended, that's going to end on September 4th. And so I just wonder, even if there's not another wave and, is in terms of COVID rising up again, I wonder if it's going to be stressful for certain people to just suddenly think on October 1st, all the support they've been getting, all the assistance they've been getting, all the unemployment they've been getting suddenly went away, and they're really challenged on their housing. And suddenly, in Q4, as we head into the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, people could be in jeopardy. And so I don't want to create too much hardship on landlords, particularly individual homeowners in town who rent a room or something or whatever, and they're getting no rent or only partial rent. I mean, it's just tough on everyone. But it just occurred to me that maybe since you're doing this now, you would want to just extend it to the end of the year, so that there's like a little grace period beyond when some of these other services may dry up for folks, so they have a little more time to get themselves sorted and get income going again or get back on solid ground. Just a thought. But of course, if you can extend it again in new circumstances or whatever, then maybe that's the better way to go. I don't know, but I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
The next speaker is Kathy, followed by Liesel Blush. And Kathy, you are unmuted now. You may have to unmute your own phone or computer. There.
I have a question. You're already talking about extending this past September. I was wondering how many people in Fairfax actually are experiencing a problem. Oh, can you not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can address that after public comment if we can, but thank you.
Yes, I am curious as to how many people are experiencing. You're automatically going to push this forward. The state of California is also talking about that, but there is not relief for landlords. So to me as a landlord, it's a little frightening that you're basically putting the burden on landlords to support tenants. So I guess I don't understand your thinking and why the burden is falling on landlords to support tenants. So I guess I'm not getting an answer.
Well, we hear the public comment and then we'll as we discuss this, we'll try to answer these questions.
I guess those are basically my questions, because anybody, I don't know if you read my letter, but anybody can sign a declaration. And so there are people that are working the system. There are plenty of people, and I understand if someone really needs the help, I'm all there to help them. But it is not the landlord and all the owners of, buildings and apartment buildings and small business owners to basically support people who are not able to work or don't want to work. And to continue to extend it without providing resources is not really fair. So I guess basically that's my comment. We're not allowed to ask anyone to leave, and they don't have to look for a job. And I think I'm not the only owner that's in the same boat. I think there's probably a lot of people. So that's really all I have to say. Those were my questions. I wanted to know how many people in Fairfax were having a problem. I'm really hoping that you don't extend it to the end of the year. I feel that that's very unfair to place the burden on landlords. We have expenses just the same as everybody else does.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we did get your email. Appreciate your comments. Thank you, Kathy.
The next speaker is Liesel Blausch. Liesel, you're unmuted.
Great. I just wanted to say thank you first to Garrett Toy for your service to Fairfax, and also for managing our budget so well so that we do have a surplus so we can really address times of crisis like this last year. And I wanted to speak in support of this eviction moratorium. I think Fairfax has been just great in terms of addressing social equity and taking care of our renter population during and before this pandemic. I'm really proud of our town for having allocated its own funding towards rental assistance for Fairfax households in crisis. People around the county speak really highly of us right now and the way our town has stepped up and cooperated with other agencies distributing the funding. And but even with our generous funding, I understand that it hasn't been enough for everyone in need. So the pandemic isn't over yet, and there will be many people who will still be struggling financially long past reopening. So while Marin County has passed a eviction moratorium just last week, it's only through September 30th, and it's only for unincorporated areas of the county. And the state moratorium, as you know, expires on June 30th, and many people have not been able to access the latest round of state funding that would help them avoid eviction because the application process is so onerous that it has proved difficult to get everyone signed up in time. And I understand that both landlords and tenants are signing up for that funding. So I'd like to hear more about the part for the landlords. Advocates like the Marin Organizing Committee have continued to pressure the state to move quickly to stem a potential tide of evictions and expand eligibility for the assistance. So people are working on this issue. We just don't know when the state's going to act or if they're going to act in time. So in the interim, we really hope that you can provide Fairfax renter households with, some ability to sleep at night, not worrying that as the deadline comes closer, we're waiting on the state. We have no idea what's going to happen and if we're going to have to move out, et cetera. So I'm, again, very much in support of this. I also wanted to ask a question about enforcement. I'm assuming that the only way that people who feel like they're being unjustly evicted can get some enforcement is to go to Legal Aid of Marin, but I'd like some clarification on that. It would also be good to get a little information about the landlord community. Them are actually experiencing difficulty making ends meet, and how many of them are having tenants who are saying that they can't pay their rent and haven't been able to get any assistance from the county or from the town. And, just want to reiterate in the end that we have to make sure that both landlords and renters can get the rental assistance they need to do this. So whatever way we can do that would be really helpful. But again, thank you for doing this, and I'm very much in support.
Thank you, Lisa.
And there are no other raised hands at this time.
Okay. Thank you. We'll close the public comment and return to council. And I see Barbara.
Well, a couple of things I want to mention. So regarding enforcement, it is Legal Aid of Marin, and I sit on the federal HUD, the county's program for federal HUD money, which included CARES Act and now some of these funds. And so we allocated even more money to legal aid because we knew they were going to help us through this situation. As far as the number of people in Fairfax, I'm not sure that we have that information, but I do know we created our own rental assistance program. And I know Garrett maybe has more anecdotal information about some of the heartbreaking stories that we learned through and that was just for Fairfax, through the community benefit organizations or nonprofits that helped us through that piece. I would also say at this point, I think September 30th makes sense. I don't think we should be looking at extending this further at this time. And I do hear our landlord, Kathy, I don't remember your last name from your letter. There are hardships for landlords. The town of Fairfax cannot take on providing support for that. But the county's program is a little unique on the rental assistance. And I mean, one of the pieces I want to point out is that there is rental assistance money that is trying to be, along with our small pot, the county has had rental assistance money from the Community Foundation, from federal money, from some of their own funding they put in. And so the rental assistance funding goes directly to the landlords. So it's not that we're asking landlords to go without, and there is an issue that the county is trying to work on as far as trying to make those applications easier, trying to provide more help, because some of it, you expect people to go through the internet. Not everybody has that ability to do so. But I do think we should stay with September 30th. I think if things continue, and they will probably always continue for people after we're through this COVID period, because there will be people, it's difficult to pay rent at the prices that I know one of our members is a renter. And I've been a renter in the past. So I would just say that I think we need to think very carefully at that time. I think the September 30th makes sense for now. And I think with the county working hard to try to get those funds out there, and the way the county's program also works, if landlords want to accept, and they may have changed that with the new funding, but the previous program that they put in place a couple of months ago was they would pay 80% of the rent if the landlord agreed to waive 20% for that short period. And so there may be some aspects there And I'm not sure how they're going to address the new American Rescue Plan Act, because I suspect they'll be continuing to provide rental assistance. Thank you.
Renee.
Yeah, just a question. Barbara, you were saying that the CDBG or the Community Development Block Grant money there's funding going to legal aid to.
Yeah, so,
Well, but actually, just real quick.
Yeah.
To the whole thing. So with our mandatory mediation ordinance, wouldn't that be sort of the first port of call for a tenant who was dealing with an illegal eviction?
No, okay, so there's a couple of pieces. So the mandatory mediation is for rent increases over 10% within a year. Okay, that's what that's about. So okay, so the difference here is we've allocated a lot of money through that county. It's not county money, it's all of our money that we get from HUD for legal aid to do enforcement, because even though for a while the courts were not allowed to do evictions, the courts are opening up. So people are trying to evict people regardless of these protections that are in place. So legal aid does the enforcement to prevent that. So there's kind of so many pieces in this puzzle, but we did the just cause eviction, which is separate from this. That's where people can evict people for just cause, which typically has to do with non-payment of rent. But now we're looking at this issue, which is dealing with people unable to pay rent. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I was quoting the wrong one. I meant just cause, but I understand the differentiation. I mean, I understand what you're saying. That it's not about, that it's about not paying rent, which in this case is the case. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Chance, if you were going to say something, otherwise I would.
I just wanted to thank Councilmember Kohler for her comments. I think they expressed a lot of the things that I was going to say. And I would like clarification from Garrett as to where that the local renter assistance program funding sits at, or once we kind of paused that and waited to see how folks use the county funding stream.
Oh, so an update is I don't have the latest update on the program, so I have to reach out and talk to them. I went back and looked at some data, and I think at one point 41 people had inquired or applied for rental assistance under our local program. I actually don't know, I can't recall the number of Fairfax residents that actually received funding from other programs. I thought at one time they shared that information with us, but I'll have to get the status update on the rental program, and I can provide that to the council at your July 7th meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall that one of the reasons we paused is that the nonprofits knew that there was so much work coming from the county, they wanted to distribute those funds first before they worked on ours, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So I really very much appreciate Councilmember Kohler in particular, but all of the council members who follow the details of this and have been working with it throughout all of the different processes of supporting renters, especially during COVID, but well before COVID. So I'll just ask a question, beline my lack of understanding of those details. In relative to the comment that we got from Kathy, how clear do we think it is to a renter who is not able to pay their rent what programs are available to them? I know that Liesl referred to what she described as the onerous application process for county funds. Fairfax funds, I think, are a lot less onerous to apply for, but do people know about these? Or how, I was just looking at their website, our town website, to refresh my memory as to whether there was anything on the front of the website that described this. Anything. So I'm just wondering if we can help in any way to guide people who are hoping to not be evicted and not being evicted because of these ordinances that we're passing, to find their way to getting funding to be able to pay at least some of the rent so that they so that the landlords aren't left holding the bag.
What I recall in discussions with the nonprofits is part of that income group, if they're primarily Spanish speaking, they do know where to reach out. They generally been going in town. They normally go to St. Rita's, and that's really been the point of contact. And the system is set up that you have to call. And it's not an online application because they have bilingual speakers. And so they're quite aware of that target population. And what I recall they told me is that they believe they've reached out quite significantly to the target group to make sure that that group is able to get in contact with someone and they follow up. And then if they're primarily a Spanish speaker or non-English speaker, then they make sure they have a translator on hand.
Just a correction that it's St. Vincent's and not St. Rita's.
Well, it is St. Vincent's, but people actually go to St. Rita's and they access the program that way. So that's true. It is St. Vincent de Paul, but it's the St. Rita's where people go physically.
Okay.
And doesn't Ritter House also, they have 5 nonprofits that implement the program. Ritter House is one of the others. Is there anywhere in town that people specifically go other than St. Rita's? Is this something that we could publish?
We used to we could redo it and stuff in the newsletter when we put out if the council adopts this ordinance, so we could have that. But yeah, my understanding from Ritter House is people contact them directly, but people that go in person all go to St. Rita's. So St. Vincent de Paul actually gets the lion's shares of the applicants.
Okay, thank you. But definitely put more in the newsletter if we adopt this ordinance. I think continuing to get the word out, and I know the county, I know Liesel's very involved, but I know the county's really struggling to make this easier for folks. So they really want to get the funding out.
We did a little flyer before, so we could do that again. We distributed them through the food pantry and some of the other outlets, if you will, in town. So we could do that again.
And Garrett, do you know how much money we have in the local funding that we had set aside originally that's still left over?
Originally we budgeted 60. I think we did 60, and then did I report back we have 20 something? So in July we'll be able to let you know how much is left and where everything's at. But Councilmember Kohler is correct that they wanted to put it on hold while they used all their other funding and figured out how to address some real equity issues. I think I had reported that they had said something along the lines that perhaps people of color maybe borrowed to make their rent because they were worried, and that really more Caucasians took advantage of the program, and they were trying to assess that equity to get money to the people that prepaid or borrowed or paying high interest rates on their funding. So I'll have another discussion with them on July 7th. Maybe I'll see if they could just make a report to you. That might be the easiest thing.
Okay. Chance, yeah.
If there's no further comments, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Please.
Great. So I'd move that we introduce and adopt an urgency ordinance entitled "An Urgency Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax temporarily prohibiting residential evictions without cause through September 30th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Cotrano, second Kohler. And if you can take a roll call vote, please.
If I may, that was waived first reading also, right? That would be right. Yes, it's an urgency. Never mind. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can take a roll call vote.
Okay.
We do need 4/5 to pass an urgency ordinance. So, Councilmember Cutrano,
Yes.
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Councilmember Goddard,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellman,
Yes.
and Mayor Ackerman.
Yes.
That was, motion passes, 5 ayes.
Okay. Thank you. And we, if we can forego a break at this, 5 minutes? You want?
Can we just take a short break?
Okay.
Less than 5 minutes?
Yeah. It's 8:39 right now. That would make it 8:44. Let's make it 8:44. We'll be back. Thank you. We're back from a brief break. So we can go on to item 11, and if we could get a staff report, please.
Sure. Item 11 is the introduction of an ordinance of the Town Council of Town of Fairfax removing the subsection that requires residency requirement for the town manager. So your current code basically says your town manager has to live within Marin County. And with my pending departure, it would seem that this provision might have the unintended consequence of kind of limiting your candidate pool for the position. Primary reason is Marin has high cost of living, home prices are pretty expensive, and that just may make it difficult for someone to actually live in Marin County. So the suggestion is that if you eliminate that provision of residency in Marin County, you can open up the applicant pool and give the council the greatest flexibility in terms of evaluating applicants and ultimately appointing an applicant to be your next town manager. And I should point out, there are, I believe, at least 2 town managers that live outside of Marin County. So with that's pretty much the staff report.
Thank you. So this would not prevent us, as we consider applicants, from considering it to be a positive if someone lived in the county. It's just removing that specific requirement.
Right. You have flexibility. You have a preference. You could negotiate some kind of moving incentive or whatever you'd like to do, but at least you'll have the greatest flexibility if you remove that residency requirement.
Okay. Are there any questions or clarifications on that? Okay. And so if we can go to the public comment and hear that. Michelle?
Yes, if you have a public comment on this item, and I see 2 hands raised, Frank Egger and Richard Applebaum. Frank, you are unmuted now. Oh, no, sorry. I think I unmuted you, but you might have to unmute yourself.
You're still muted somehow, Frank. There we go.
Oh, now.
All right.
There we go. On June 2nd, Fairfax Town Manager Garrett Toy announced he had given his notice of departure from Fairfax as he had accepted the city manager position with the city of Sonoma. The city of Sonoma announced on June 3rd that Garrett Toy had accepted the position of city manager and his start date was July 20th. For whatever reason, the Fairfax Town Council has never announced their town manager was leaving and has never reported out their actions regarding hiring a new town manager, although they've met a number of times in closed session. Tonight, there is an ordinance amending Fairfax's residency requirement that requires Fairfax's manager to live in Marin County. So a couple of questions. First of all, who have you selected that doesn't live in Marin County to be the manager of Fairfax, number 1? And then number 2, even the city of Sonoma requires its city manager to live in a Sonoma school district. It's a larger boundary than that of the city of Sonoma, but it's close to the city of Sonoma. And I'll read you the Sonoma's code. The city of Sonoma's municipal code, chapter 2.08, city manager. Residents within the Sonoma Valley Unified School District at the time of appointment shall not be required as a condition of appointment. But within 180 days thereafter, the city manager shall become a resident of the district, or the city council should declare the office of city manager vacant. So they give the new city manager 6 months to move into not the city of Sonoma, but the Sonoma Valley Unified School District, which is a larger boundary. So I would urge you to either keep the residency requirement you have now that a Fairfax manager lives in Marin County, or adopt Sonoma's code that requires the future town manager of Fairfax to live in the Ross Valley School District. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank.
The next speaker is Richard Applebaum, followed by Jane Richardson Mack. And Richard, you're unmuted.
Thank you. So I very, very strongly feel that it's really, really important for our town, because of the kind of town we are, as small as we are, the active citizenry, that if at all possible, I would love to find a talent that was local. If there was actually someone nearby here in Fairfax or Woodacre or Ross or somewhere close by, like that's the number one preference for me. And if that's not possible, at a minimum, they should be as close by as possible in Marin. But if you feel that it's a limit and a restriction, you would really like to open up to find all the possible talent that is out there in the whole country, then I would be comfortable with something where you recruited from anywhere, but there was like an 18-month grace period where the new town manager had to transition here. I don't know if there's any resources that the town owns that could create some kind of like housing or apartment or something that was part of the package that could be offered. At moving costs, whatever it is. But if the actually truly greatest next best person for our town is found in Wisconsin or in Florida or wherever, I'm open to it, because obviously we want someone really special that's a great fit for us. But I think it's really, really important for our town that our town manager is here locally, walking around amongst the people, interacting, and it's just, we have an ethos here. We're not all in alignment on all the issues, but I think there's a general sense in which we're all here for certain reasons. You've all campaigned on some of those reasons, and I would have a problem with someone commuting from Hercules to be our town manager. That doesn't feel right to me. It feels like a disconnect, and I just don't want to be just a job to someone who's commuting to their job. And so I would really like to see, I understand if you have to go outside to find the right person, I would hope that we at least looked internally and locally and could try and maybe find somebody who already knows the town and knows some of the issues and is already familiar with things. I feel like that's a benefit. But if that's not possible, you can't get the skill set and requirements that you need locally, you do have to go outside. I really think it's important that, whatever the reasonable amount of time to allow someone to transition their life or move, but whether that's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or something, but all attempts should be made to get as close to town or being in town as possible. I feel really strongly about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
The next speaker is Jane Richardson Mack, followed by Liesl Blosch, followed by Deborah Benson. And Jane or John, you're unmuted now.
Hi again, council members. John Romatis, resident of Fairfax. Thank you for hearing me. First, I want to just speak to Garrett. I want to thank Garrett. I probably won't get a chance to thank you in public, so I don't know when. Maybe there's another meeting you'll attend, but I just want to say thank you to Garrett for your patience and your ability to kind of herd cats in our town. I guess we could say we've kind of, toughened you up for Sonoma, because we have a kind of a contentious little town here, So thank you. I want to thank you for your service. It's much appreciated. As far as hiring somebody from outside of Marin, I don't think that's ideal. I think that the optimal candidate will be from within Marin. But I understand that, the challenges with a minimum, or a minimal pool of applicants, it's difficult to kind of stick to that. But I do like Frank's idea where there's the 180-day kind of attachment to that, where it's like you come in, and I think with the salary that's attached to the town manager, that's completely doable for somebody to live in Marin. So that's something to think about. And I think that's about it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Okay, the next speaker is Liesel Blausch, followed by Deborah Benson, followed by Mark Bell. And Liesel, you're unmuted.
Great, thank you. So I just had to say one thing about this, which is like, yeah, ideally the person would live in Fairfax and love Fairfax, et cetera. I think the reality is that you are going to open yourself up to a much better pool of candidates if you are willing to recruit from outside. And I also think there's a real diversity issue here. I mean, it's been great. Garrett's been here. He's in the community, but Marin, as we know, the demographics are very white. And so, should you widen your pool a little bit, you might get somebody who was whatever race, who was the most applicable applicant. So I just want to keep that in mind, that there is that kind of issue with any time when we say we're going to limit something to just Marin County, we do put ourselves in kind of a box. But, if there is a way to make it so that the person can live or wants to live in Fairfax, that would be great. And I also want to just note that being the town manager and living in Fairfax might be a little challenging too. You might want to retreat a little bit at the end of the day. So that's all I want to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, the next speaker is Deborah Benson, followed by Mark Bell, followed by Jane Richardson Mack. So Deborah, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, council members, for
We quit hearing you, though.
Deborah.
We quit seeing you entirely.
Hang on.
Here we go.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good, great. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, council members, for hearing me. I think it needs to be a requisite for a council member of whatever hue to live in Marin County and go, fish outside of Marin County to get the best possible candidate, and give them perhaps, as Sonoma has done, a window for moving if they're not already residing here. I guess, and I do want to thank Garrett. Thank you very much, Garrett, for your service. We haven't always been in agreement, but you are steadfast. And I also want to thank you for your most recent act, which is bringing the striping on Cascade Drive back to its original form. So good luck to you in your new home and your new life. And thank you. That's all I have to say.
Hey, Deborah.
And the next speaker is Mark Bell, followed by Jane Richardson Mack. Mark, you're unmuted.
Hi, it's actually Ling Xian. So I just wanted to confirm what the previous people have been saying, which is that it sounds really good to me to have it, to ask whoever are going to choose for the management to move to Marin County within 6 months. I think that makes a lot of sense to do that. So thank you so much, and good luck with finding a good person for doing the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ling Xian.
The next speaker is Jane Richardson Mack, and you're unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
I just wanted to give my support, if possible, if you could find somebody from Marin. This is a different place than other places, and I think if there's an understanding of what it is here, as opposed to, say, someone who came from Oakland or someone who even came from San Francisco. I know some people are not in favor of our quote small town values, but I value what Fairfax is, was, and can be. And I don't think we need to reinvent the whole town. I prefer to kind of work with what we have and make it better. And I did want to thank Garrett also. I have not always agreed with him by any means, but he has held it together during very contentious times on many issues. And there will be more to come. So we need somebody who can understand where we're coming from. And I think that would best be served by somebody who has experience living in Marin. If that doesn't happen, then the other business of giving them a certain amount of time to find a place to live here, and it's a good salary, so they should be able to do that. And I think, oh, and if you do have anybody in mind already, it would go a long way to building public trust if you'd let us in on it as soon as you know. There are rumors floating around that you've already talked to some people, and those things are, that doesn't work very well. So just please keep transparent, keep upfront, let us know what's going on, and we'll all get along much better and fine, and they'll rebuild trust that's gotten a little beaten up lately. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane.
And the next speaker is Mark Bell this time, I'm guessing. Mark, you're unmuted.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I think that there should be a residency requirement built in because if we're supposed to be this like in the forefront of the environment, zero waste, et cetera, we really don't want people commuting long distances to be here. If there's an emergency or disaster, can't get across the bridges. A lot of times things happen on the ground. It's good to have your town manager or town administrator nearby so that they can help deal with issues. And as far as color, I don't know, maybe we should go like green or orange. Maybe we could like go to a different planet. Is that good enough for you, Liesl? I'm out.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. So if you want to close the public comment.
I will close the public comment, and I will make a reference back to our meeting protocol about maintaining standards of tolerance and civility, and not ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public. So please, Mark, I know you're angry. I assume you're angry, but please. Okay, so we can close public comment. And I will clarify on behalf of council, we do not have anybody in mind. In fact, we're still in the process of figuring out what our process will be for recruiting. So whatever rumors are floating around that we've already got it figured out and we're not telling you, we wish we had it figured out, but we don't.
Mr. Mayor, this is Janet.
Yes.
May I add some clarity, hopefully? Background?
Ask for which? Sorry.
As for the topic of a residency requirement in a muni code.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of cities do this, and it's a holdover because it used to be the thing to have a residency requirement for your city. But for the most part, I would say that most city attorneys, most town attorneys feel that that's probably unconstitutional. I'm unaware that it's been litigated, but they probably feel that it's in violation of the California Constitution. And so that's something that people try to avoid now. And as a compromise position, a lot of places will say, you have to live within a reasonable travel distance so that you can get here in an emergency. Say 30 minutes. You have to live within 30 minutes or, 45 minutes or something that you can get here in a timely fashion in case of an emergency. But it provides a great deal of flexibility for you to remove this from the municipal code. And you can always negotiate with anybody you find for whatever type of living arrangement you're looking for. If you would prefer to have somebody who lives close within, say, 30 minutes or so, you can negotiate for that and put it in the contract. You want them to live in Marin County after a certain amount of time, you can also put that in the contract. It just provides you greater flexibility not to have it written in your code, but rather to have it on a case-by-case basis, maybe included in an employment agreement.
Mhm. Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. And that makes a lot of sense to me. That's why I asked the question right at the outset, that to remove this from the specific requirement does not limit our ability for that to be a preference for us. And
Correct.
that you stated that in the affirmative. So yeah, thank you. Barbara?
I believe Stephanie had her hand up first.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Stephanie.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a few comments. From what I heard this evening from the public, it sounds like there's general consensus that, of course, ideally, we would want the town manager to live in Marin County. And that was something that I felt, pretty strongly about, but I do think that we're going to have challenges from a recruitment standpoint. And, it's something that as we are interviewing candidates, that could be, a priority for us. But I just, we're a town of 8,000 and I'm a little uncomfortable requiring somebody to relocate. And I will say, as far as, my short tenure and working with Garrett, he doesn't live here, but he knows the community and he knows this town like the back of his hand. And I've been very impressed with that. And so, you don't need to live here to know the town. There are cases like in San Anselmo, for example, where the town manager does live in the town, and that works very, very well. But I can appreciate the need for some anonymity, to be able to go to the grocery store or, your kids' games and just be part of not have to deal with work, and have people walk up to you and want to talk about this issue or that issue. And I would be open to, I appreciate Janet's comments. I would be open to, some type of parameter around, needing to live. I mean, nothing really in Marin is within half an hour of here, right? I mean, you have, how can you live outside of Marin and be a half an hour? So I think it would need to be an hour, maybe 45 minutes, but I would be open to discussing that. That's all.
All right, Barbara.
Yeah, so first of all, Garrett doesn't live in Fairfax, but he lives in Terra Linda, and he does know this town really like the back of his hand. As you said, Vice Mayor Hellman. A couple of things I want to share is I recently talked to a local real estate agent in Fairfax. He's been here a number of years, who I've known for about 25 years. Houses, the market is insane. Friends of mine sold their house in Terra Linda in a half a day for over asking, which was incredible amount of money, to 20 or 25-year-olds who made millions in tech. A town manager or a city manager is not going to make that kind of money. This realtor I spoke to, who was the one who sold the spec house near the library for quite a bit of money, has said houses are 14 or 15 offers $250,000 to $300,000 over asking. I talked to a lady the other day who just moved here, sold their house in Huntington Beach that they lived in many years and probably sold it for a fortune. And they are losing out on houses on a daily basis, offering more than $250,000 over asking. So we need to be real here. I realize that a town manager makes more than folks working at Good Earth and those kinds of things, but we also know that none of our police department can afford to live in Fairfax. A few of the firefighters do live in Fairfax, but they've lived here for a long time or live in the valley. I think we need to be realistic and also think about the pool, which I think Liesl spoke to, and I believe Vice Mayor Hellman spoke to. We are going to be very fortunate to be able to get somebody who may live close to Marin, and if possible, somebody in Marin that I haven't heard about. I don't think we should put a timing requirement on it, because even if you live in Richmond, maybe we can get somebody from Richmond. That would be nice. That can be quite a schlep. So I don't think, and the idea of saying have somebody move in 18 months, it's not realistic. You know, I bought my place in 1996 for what I thought was an incredible amount of money for a 2-bedroom apartment. It's now worth more than 3 times the amount. It's still a 2-bedroom apartment, basically. So I think we need to be realistic. We need to have as broad a pool as possible. I think to the extent feasible, we need to have people that are closer to Marin or in Marin if possible. But I don't think we should close our eyes to someone who's going to be an excellent candidate, who's going to come to our town. I don't think if somebody lives outside of Marin, are they going to think this is just a job? Fairfax is not just a job. You come into it, it's a new community experience, different from any other community in Marin, and it's a whole new world. So I think whoever we are lucky enough to recruit, I think we should not hamstring them by burdensome requirements in a contract agreement. And I think we should look for the best candidate possible that's as close as possible. And I also think that if we get someone who's really good at building a team, even if that city manager can't be here within an hour or even an hour and a half, particularly in an emergency, we've learned through COVID that we can do a lot of things through remote means and also building a good team. So those are my 2 cents. I appreciate, and I had asked for us to bring this after Garrett told us that this was a provision in our code that I wasn't aware of. I think this gives us the most flexibility, and we need to keep our eyes and ears open for the very best candidate we can get. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Renee.
Yeah, I just also wanted to briefly mention, and I concur with my colleagues' statements and sentiments here. But it's also important for us to remember, and for the public to remember, that we do pay our staff and our town manager on the very lowest end of the town manager's salaries in the county. I don't believe we're the lowest, but and someone could correct me. I don't know if you've looked, Barbara, but there will be some competition in terms of.
We're low with San Anselmo. We're probably a little lower than San Anselmo, or right on par. We're the lowest in the county.
Okay. So although it seems like a sizable salary, given all that everyone has talked about our housing costs, I think we would be severely limiting our pool. And also, I just want to just take one moment and take off on what John Romatus shared. And he said something, I wrote it down. He said, this is a contentious little town. and I know that he says that, and we all say that often lovingly, if you will, but it's not an easy place to be in a leadership position these days. There's a lot of looking for conflicts of interest, and I think that I'm not saying this probably very politically correctly, but I do. I echo what Vice Mayor Hellman said, in that anonymity can be a very important thing, especially for a town manager that works somewhere where meetings go very late, and where social media tends to go very rampant, and where there tends to be a legacy of mistrusting staff. And that is not something that came with Garrett Toy's tenure here in Fairfax. So actually for me, it's a lesson, and I hope for the public it's a lesson, in that when we do find, and when we do go through the process and then work with the public in our hiring process, that we think about coming at it with kindness, and that we think about as being as welcoming and as open to the possibility of having staff that that is part of this town, so that maybe they would want to live in this town. I don't know how to speak this very eloquently, but I guess this is just a plea for kindness, and that when we move forward with our next town manager, that we take and be mindful of what we really value about our community, which is to be inclusive and welcoming. So that's all I have to say. And I do think that we need to take that clause out of our code in order to make this hiring process as robust and effective as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, Chance.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the points here that I think my colleagues have said so eloquently, and we might be finishing on record time for a meeting. So I just wanted to say that I think, some of the discussions around, making someone live within town or figuring out whether or not it makes sense for them to live within Marin, I think some of that feels kind of premature as we're trying to sort through this process. Right now, we're just trying to find the best possible candidates. And from there, I think to Janet, our town attorney's point, then we can negotiate and try to figure out what makes the most sense for our community. Obviously, if there's somebody from out of state, I doubt they're going to be commuting from out of state. And I know I don't like commutes very much myself. So I imagine that someone would want to be close enough to this community as well, especially because Fairfax rocks. So I'm going to finish there, but thanks.
Okay, thank you. I concur with the comments that you all have made, and I do support this change to our code because we need the flexibility, and because I really like that concept of building a team is really what's important, and that's something that it makes a huge difference. Right now, staff in our town hall work together so well and support each other so well, support us well. I think they feel like we support them well. I hope so. I hope the community can as Renee was saying, just understand with some compassion what an incredibly difficult, complex job this is. And we on council, I mean, I feel like I can fumble around, as you've seen me do in this very meeting, and not know what I'm doing, but as an elected, but Garrett's always got our back. He's always actually keeping it together and in helping us figure out where we go next and what we've missed. And that's just, it's incalculably important. And I've worked with other teams in many other circumstances, technical and in nonprofits and so forth. And the team and the people, the skill and the depth, not only technical skill, but the skill in dealing with people and the skill in being able to keep your spirits up while dealing with difficult situations. And these are just incredibly important and valuable. And that's what we're looking for. And I hope the community can trust that that's all we're looking for. We're looking for the best possible person. And I support this change because it would allow us to have the flexibility to find the best possible person. But that's what we're looking for. And I'm sure that anybody who accepts a job as a town manager in Fairfax will have certainly some appreciation of what Fairfax is, because they'll do their research too. And, you know, like Garrett, they'll have some reason why they want to be in this community and working in this small town, because at Garrett's skill level, he could be a city manager in a much larger city. But I never really discussed this with him, but I presume he made a decision, as he's making a decision now, to be in a small town. And there we'll be looking for someone like that. Okay, can we have a motion?
I'll make the
Maybe
motion.
we can go for a record and finish.
Well, we have one more
We
item.
have one more
I'm
item.
too excited.
That's
Hold on
right.
a second. So
I'm already excited.
We have one more item after this.
Yes, yes.
I'd like to introduce and read by title only an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax, removing subsection B from section 2.12.030 residency requirement. And do I need to read the introduction of an ordinance amending Municipal Code 2.12 town manager to remove the requirement that the town manager be a resident of Marin County, CEQA exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3.
can I make a friendly amendment to that?
Sure.
Because I mean, I would like them to be able to get here in a timely fashion. I don't want them to live in Contra Costa County and just say, I don't mind a 2 or 3 hour commute. Like I would.
We spoke about that being potentially part of an employment agreement, not the ordinance.
Well, I'm saying I would prefer that they live within an hour commute because I think it's important.
There are places in Marin that are longer than an hour commute. I'm not accepting the friendly amendment at this point, and I think you can bring it up in the employment agreement as we go through the process.
Chance?
I just want to add that I commute to Mill Valley, hopefully not for much longer, but it's like it can be an hour commute from Fairfax to Mill Valley. So I don't know if making it a time-based, since that's so flexible, yeah, I don't know if that's appropriate, but I understand where you're coming from, Vice Mayor Hellman.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's not something that really can be easily put into an ordinance. And I think I trust myself and fellow council members to take that into account as we interview people and as we talk with someone. If someone lives in Mendocino, we're going to definitely say, well, if we're going to hire you, we're going to expect you to move closer. And that just seems obvious. So I would like to have is the breadth of applicants so that we can choose.
For sure. But I guess we haven't really discussed yet. We don't really know where each other stands on that. I mean, what is going to be too far? What is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what you do as you go through the process.
Pardon me?
That's part of what you do as you go through the process. That's not part of an ordinance necessarily. So my motion stands as is. If somebody wants to second it or not.
Could I ask another question, Barbara? So as we're interviewing people, what if they ask us, what are your requirements? Do I need to live within 30 or 50 miles? I mean, I would ask that.
Well, I think
we need to have a point of view.
Okay, I don't think this is appropriate as part of the discussion of an ordinance. I think that's appropriate as part of the discussion of recruitment, etc. But I don't think that's appropriate as part of a discussion of an ordinance. That's part of the process.
I hear you, and I respectfully disagree that you could put in like a 30 or 50 mile.
I don't agree with that, and I think Janet opined on that there is some potential concern over having those limitations, and those kinds of things could be as part of an employment agreement. So what I'm saying is part of the process that we haven't even begun is to have further discussions on that. But I really think, as I expressed earlier, that we need to keep our eyes open for the best candidate.
For sure.
And so let's go through that process, which is not what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, well, I feel like yes, it's a part of a negotiation process. A negotiation it's hard to quantify and put boundaries on it, but the negotiation process would possibly involve more than one really qualified candidate. It might involve several candidates, of which one is obviously the best qualified. And, we negotiate based on that. And we can also talk about, we would love to see you move closer. That's the only thing that we're hesitating about, and see what we can do about that or whatever. But, that's what negotiation is about. But I think we all, it feels to me like we all have the shared value that so many of the speakers, the public speakers tonight have said. I think we're all on exactly the same page on this, that it would be important, it would be really good if someone lived closer. But at the same time, we want a really good person. And so I don't think that we're going to suddenly do something like hire somebody from that lives 3 hours away and not even think to talk about that. I'm not worried about that. I don't think we'll do that. And I don't think we should put it in the ordinance. I support the ordinance as we've got it right now, what we're doing tonight, the change to remove this requirement and just allow us to negotiate, allow us to recruit and negotiate.
So all due respect, and I do respect what you're raising, Vice Mayor Hellman, but I am ready to second Councilmember Kohler's motion, just for policy. As a piece of policy, I think it's stronger that way, and I think that the negotiation is where it's all going to come down. So I would second that motion.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion, Kohler, second, Goddard. If we can take a vote then, Michelle, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Cutrano,
Yes.
Councilmember Goddard,
Yes.
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellman,
Yes.
Mayor Ackerman,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you all. And I accept the well wishes of the people who said good luck to us. I think we're going to find somebody really good. I have great hopes. So I had not forgotten that we have one more agenda item. That was item 5 that was pulled from the consent calendar, and it's put at the end of the meeting, which is what we're coming close to now. So Garrett, would you like to give us a staff report on item 5, please?
Sure. Item 5 was authorize the town manager to create and implement a vegetation management grant program to assist lower income households and allocate an initial $25,000 to the program. Now, you'll notice in the staff report, it did say you would get a supplemental staff report. However, I actually had mentioned to the mayor, we need to pull this item and discuss it because in my discussions with MWPA, specifically actually Rich Shortall with Fire Safe, and I was speaking to Chief Weber, I think in order to put together a program, I think I need some policy guidance on some key issues from the council before I could do it. Otherwise, I think I'm really just shooting in the dark. So what I have is I actually put together this sheet, if I could share my screen, that kind of has the key points. But maybe a suggestion would be, why don't I just say what they are, and then maybe you should take public comment. Maybe that would provide feedback on what you think related to some of these guidelines. So things I need direction on is what can it be used for? Now, I'm assuming brush clearing and home hardening, but didn't know if you wanted to do home hardening. I wanted to add seniors in there. So seniors plus people that are disabled. So I need some direction on that. In terms of lower income households, are we talking extremely low and very low, adjusted for household size? Is it owner occupied or can be applied to rental? What's the grant amount? Right now, proposal that I saw that MWPA may consider would be a grant up to 1,000 with maybe a 50% match depending on your income level. Chief Weber is thinking more about $500, and it's a matching requirement. And the reason I bring up Chief Weber is because he's the chief of, as well as the county, as well as Ross Valley Fire, and he's trying to develop a program that can be used for all of Ross Valley, and he'd like it to be as consistent as possible. Of course, no one's created one. We're first out of the blocks. The other thing is a matching requirement. Should you have a matching requirement, like for seniors, not for seniors, not for extremely low, but for very low? Should it only be on a reimbursement basis based on receipts, or should we be able to advance money, maybe limit that to $500? Application, we want to keep it really simple. So it's a lot of self-certification, maybe before and after pictures, keeping it very labor intensive. My understanding is the Novatos program, depends on your perspective, it is quite onerous and they haven't gotten a lot of takers. And really the bottom line here is I'm thinking is based on your direction, we create a program, we try it, we see how successful it is. And then if that doesn't seem to work so well, then we modify it, come back to council, modify it, and we try it again. So with that, what I can do is maybe after public comment, I could put the key direction points we need in order to create a program, and then you can provide feedback based on that. But that's pretty much the staff report. Just need some guidance.
Can I just ask a question? So MWPA has in the approved work plan doing a grant program such as this, as well as I know there's a separate one just for Fairfax as part of the work plan, which I'm sure is what you're talking about. But as part of the broader MWPA program, which will deal with access and functional needs, seniors, and low income, the idea there was that the ops committee and the technical advisory committee would get together and work out the details of that. So I know we're anxious to get started. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in the works, but I'm wondering if it's worthwhile waiting to hear what they come up with. And are we planning in Fairfax that town staff would actually be giving these grants out and monitoring and all that kind of stuff? That's a lot for a $25,000 program. I'm just wondering if it would be worthwhile to say, should we find out a little bit more on where the ops committee and the technical advisory committee on MWPA is, because that program is supposed to launch soon. So I'm just sort of questioning stepping into this right now. I'm not against it, and I think by us doing it, we would make sure there would be money allocated specifically for Fairfax. So I know you wanted to speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you make it all a good point. I did talk to Rich Shortall, and the issue is their program, MWPA's program, would be larger. Obviously, I think they're talking 400,000 countywide. I think by the time they kind of figure out how it would work, what the guidelines would be, how it'd be set up, it would be probably closer to the end of the year or available for next year. And I thought the thought pattern was from Vice Mayor Hellman and Councilmember Goddard at the budget workshop was trying to get something available for residents this year for the current chipper days. And I don't think MWPA would even get it to a point where we can even say, oh, all right, well, that sounds good. We could do that. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to go ahead first and then see how it works. And once theirs is up and running, we probably don't need to offer one anymore. This is more of a pilot, temporary.
And just one follow-up question. There's no way that Fire Safe Marin would kind of, as a courtesy to us. No. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, I've already asked all those questions. No, and that's why one of the policy things is keeping it really simple and taking the pictures before and after. That was Chief Weber's idea to try to keep it so we're not going out there and inspecting and re-inspecting and trying to get documentation and all these other things. But again, that's more of a policy discussion.
And just one more follow-up and then I'll stop. So the guys that we have in Ross Valley Fire that are doing these D-space inspections, is it possible that for this small grant program that they could go out and check those for us without us paying additional money? So we're not using up the grant money? Maybe you already asked that question too.
Yeah, that might be a little, I don't know. I don't think that's possible given that their workload is such that really they're just trying to get to all the new properties, all the properties they didn't get to last year.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, you go ahead. Your hand was up first.
Yeah, so I'm glad this is on the agenda. We've talked about it for a few months, and Renee and I have both been consulting with Rich as well. So Garrett, I thought when the three of us, Councilmember Goddard, yourself, and I thought we talked about definitely making it simple, including seniors and very and extremely low segments. That was my recollection. So I guess, that's what I thought would be proposed. And then I'm open to hearing if people want to change that. We have this bubbled up from our Firewise neighborhood groups, our respective ones, Manor Hill and Cascade. And there are several seniors in my neighborhood that I know could use this and could use the support. And they're either widowed and they can't keep up with it, or there's just various reasons. So that would be my preference, to include elders very and extremely low. And then I guess I don't recall talking about matching, but the Nevada program matches, right? Okay. Yeah, I don't know that we need to do that, but what is the idea to keep it simple? How do we reimburse? Like, what is the program structure?
Yeah, so the thought pattern would be this: if you advance funds, you would limit it to the $500, and it would be something like they take a picture of the area or something that's going to be cleared, and they give you one afterwards, and that verifies the work's done, you're good, and you're advancing the funds. If you had a higher amount or match amount, that would probably be on a reimbursement basis. The issue that we're struggling with is how to make sure the work gets done if you give people the money ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay, Chance, did you have something to?
Well, is Councilmember Goddard next? Or
go ahead.
Okay. So I think my immediate feeling about allocating money for these types of things is that the home hardening is like the biggest bang for the buck in terms of like long term, or like the permanence or the durability of a change to a landscape as it relates to creating ember resistant zones. However, if the purpose of this is to support seniors, low income, very low income, even disabled or differently abled folks, in the interim while a MWPA program gets up and running, and we're trying to do that to address the current chipper day stuff, then maybe it makes sense to focus it on the brush, or prioritize the brush stuff, and then it's my feeling is that it should be the reimbursement and make it easy with the before and after photos. Seems to be the easiest way to go about it. But I just wanted to share that. I don't even think it's the appropriate time to share it because I don't know if we had public comment yet, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. So Renee, unless you had any other clarification, I do think we should go to public comment before we continue too much longer, because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves if we design it before we hear from the public.
My only thing is, I'm just wondering, given the breadth and the length of the things that Garrett listed that he's looking for direction in, I just wondered if it wouldn't be worthwhile for Vice Mayor Hellman and myself to do one more go around with Garrett to try and narrow this down a little bit, instead of the five of us doing this. There's a lot of pieces. I think it can be easily simplified, but things are rarely easily simplified when five of us are weighing in on 10 different items. So that would be my recommendation. Unfortunately, I will be away, but I don't think it would take us long to do that. And it could come back to us July 7th so that we could get this up and off the ground right away. That would be my recommendation. I don't know if that works for you.
I certainly support that idea. I was going to say that this is the issue I'm struggling with is just, this is a temporary program, as I understand it, and until the county gets going. It's a pretty small program, and we're trying to hurry it, which I think makes sense, because that's the whole point, is to try to get it in for this year's brush clearing and chipper days. But if it can't be too complex, that's what Garrett was saying. And I think the tendency would be for it to get more and more complex as we're talking about it. So sort of the ratio of how much we put into designing it versus how long it lasts is getting a little skewed. Let's go to public comment and hear from the public, and then we'll consider what our next step is. Michelle, would you open up public comment, please, for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If anybody from the public would like to comment on this item, now is the time to raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised yet.
Okay. We'll close public comment and come back to that discussion. So, Barbara?
I support the idea of Vice Mayor Hellman and Councilmember Goddard going forward and trying to do something in a day with Garrett before Renee is unavailable. I would also just like to throw one thing out there. I like the idea of the brush clearing rather than the home hardening, which is a little more extensive. And also MWPA is going to be, I think we're looking for a group to help people do some kind of simple home hardening, similar to what that Sunrise group did, where we, they come in, I can't remember if that's their name, the group that comes in and changes your light bulbs and does some of that stuff that we got through CAC. But I think that would make it more simple. And, but that's just one thought, echoing Councilmember Contrano. But I think we should let you guys go forward.
Yeah. And I agree about the brush clearing. In fact, as I read the staff report, that's what I thought it was all about, was brush clearing. So I think that's the thing to focus on. And I really appreciate Renee, especially since you've got a very short deadline, your offer for the two of you to work on this. I think that's the right way to go.
I just want to make sure that Vice Mayor Hellman concurs with that.
Oh, yeah, I'm just, if I have a long face, it's because I know the July agenda is
growing.
Yeah.
So be prepared for a long meeting.
Yeah, get your sleep tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't like the idea of trying to figure it out on the fly right now, certainly.
Okay. All right. So do we need a motion to continue this? We don't, right?
No, it sounds like you already have your ad hoc council committee. So I'll just work with them, and then we'll come back to this item on July 7th, which now sounds like you'll have a lot of things from my last meeting. So, maybe it'll go. I shouldn't jinx it though. How long will go?
Yeah, right. They're hard to guess. All right. Thank you all. That was our last agenda item, except for council reports and comments. We have the council reports. Yeah, we don't have council reports in this agenda, but we can say any if we'd like to. Stephanie?
I don't have a council report, but I want to make sure we cover future agenda items.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was next. That was done on the agenda next. We'll get to that. So do you have a report that you wanted to make?
No.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then, so if no one else does, town manager's report, if there's you.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick verbal report on the American Rescue Plan Act. So, as we discussed, we're going to receive, looks like we'll receive 1.8 million. We're considered a non-entitlement unit. That's for any cities under 50,000 people or something like that. So the workshop I went to in the seminar, how it's going to work is you don't have to necessarily decide how you're going to spend the money. But what I'll do is prior to June 23rd, I'll fill out, you go online, you fill out the stuff. It's pretty simple, but you fill out the things and that puts you in the queue. What happens is the state reports is once I do that by June 23rd, possibility exists we'll receive half the money. It sounded a little, I can't believe they could get us the money by the end of June, which is what one of them said, but early July, you could end up with half your money, about 900,000. 12 months later, you'll get the other 900,000. In that in between time, you just have to figure out how you're going to spend the money. Ultimately, how it works is that you get it committed in 3 years, spend it in 5. I think that's how it works. And ultimately, you have to spend it on eligible expenditures. So there'll be reporting that you put that into. And so that's the most important thing, because what's going to happen at the end sounds like the federal government's going to figure out whether you spent it properly or you didn't. So that's why I think for us, we created that one sheet in the budget. We might create a separate fund. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to Michael in order to track all the expenses. They'll all be out of that one fund or one account. So when you get audited, you could just provide all the information, all the rationale, and away you go. It turns out in the public safety part, that's going to be really hard, I think. I think it's something different from CARES in the sense that they said you could do 50% of public safety, but you have to justify that they're working on all COVID-related activities, which is completely different from the CARES Act, that original 91,000 we received. So there's little tweaks, little nuances, lots of question and answers that they'll have on, but depending on when you do your council workshop, staff will be reviewing all that stuff and having suggestions. But at this point, it's the homeless funding and the storm drain. Those are clearly eligible. So anyway, that was just the quick report on the American Rescue Plan Act.
When did you say the second tranche of money comes in?
12 months after the first one.
Okay, so about this time next year, July or something? Okay.
Yes, probably. Yeah, depending when you get the first one. So best case scenario, you get it beginning. Best case scenario, end of June. I find that hard to believe, but probably maybe the early to mid-July.
It's still the same situation with reimbursement. So these are funds that we could spend and then be reimbursed?
Well, no, I think you need to wait till you get them, but it's not clear to me. I did ask a question related to reimbursement of previous expenses. That's a question and answer. They didn't actually answer it, so you have to go onto the website and look up this stuff. But I actually wouldn't be spending the money until you actually receive it, if you just want it to be safe, in case that got to be an audit thing. Of course, if expenses are reimbursable, which they may be, then you could spend it whenever, because obviously it's retro back to when COVID started.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, I'm not completely sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you expect you're going to get a little bit more information before we have our workshop about it?
Oh, absolutely. We'll look at all the stuff.
Yeah.
I have the 150 pages of the first interim rule. That wasn't quite as helpful, but they provided more guidance and frequently asked questions. And on this case, it was hosted by the League of Cities. Their staff actually is more knowledgeable now, and they were answering questions. So I believe that will be on the state website also, answering a lot of questions. So, and I think all the cities, towns in California all have same questions. Turns out, side note, little trivia is I think there's 292 cities, towns in California that are officially designated non-entitlement units.
Mhm. Okay. I don't know what that term is supposed to mean, but it basically is part of determining how much money we get. And
Yeah, we're small. We don't get CDBG or whatever directly or some other things.
Okay.
So just one quick question. Our money, the non-entitlement cities, comes through the state. It doesn't come directly from the feds, correct?
That's correct. The larger ones get it directly. Ours comes through the state, but the state isn't responsible for any monitoring or compliance.
No, I know, but they're the ones who could potentially be a holdup if there is a holdup. But they're not allowed to extract any funds from that.
Right. No, they can't. That's true. They can't extract any funds. And the reason they said June 23rd, if you're in by then that would be the first wave. If everybody in June 21st gets the first wave of funding, then everybody else gets the next wave. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds like they're putting it together as we speak. All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you. Okay. Future agenda items. Stephanie.
Yeah, I would like to add an appeal to the RETA allocation numbers on next month's agenda. The council agenda date is the 7th. The deadline is the 9th.
I thought we already discussed that staff were going to do that.
I think I did it administratively because I can do that. But I can still take it to the council.
You're saying an appeal is being filed?
Yeah, because administratively I did it online.
Mm-hmm.
But I could also take it to the council too if you want to officially talk about it.
What did you state as the, I didn't see anything about that.
Yeah, it's just you go online and you state all the reasons.
What forum were you given direction to do that, I guess?
I believe I thought at the budget workshop I indicated, thought I did, that we could administratively file an appeal.
Actually, it was another meeting because Chance looked it up online, and I believe it was, I think.
That was the fiscal planning session.
I think it was the Planning Commission joint meeting with us where I think I asked about the appeal and Chance looked up on his computer, so it wasn't in person.
Yeah, it was in the Women's Center on May 27th.
Okay, well, anyway, he said that staff were going to submit the appeal.
But you can too. I mean, if you want to see what we did, that's fine. Or you want to add to it, that's fine. The discussion related to appeal, there's some different strategies. At least that's what we heard from other communities.
Right.
So you can either list everything, which I think that was our approach, or some of the communities just focused on one thing, right? Either water or fire or something else, because the thought pattern was these appeals are rarely ever upheld. And the issue with that is, and when they are, it's just a matter of usually focus on one issue. And the most important thing for you to keep in mind, it's a zero-sum game. Marin has an allocation. If we get less, somebody else gets more. So it works the other way around. If Novato gets less, we're going to get more. That's just how it works.
So I guess I did not at all capture from our meeting that you were going to file administrative. And I don't know what that means in terms when you say all the reasons. Are you saying the reasons that ABAG gave? Because there's only 3. Are you saying that's what you used, or I don't understand?
Yeah. So I think we did an appeal before, I think to the executive committee or whatever we did with ABAG or MTC. We did a letter. The council, I think, actually approved this letter. I think, then we actually
on the methodology.
Yes. So there was a letter that all the rest of the county had used, and it talked about the things about wildfire, water, traffic, parking, whatever was in it. So it's fairly comprehensive. And so in this case, what you're doing is we're basically taking that same thing, except writing it online, basically. But
So
that
it
being
was like a free form thing where you could just type anything you wanted. That I'm trying to understand, like,
yes, yes.
Okay.
So for the appeal, you could give whatever reasons you like. I think what I was indicating, some of the other communities have focused on only one or two, or maybe one, with the possibility that maybe that would be withheld. My understanding, it's a zero-sum game. Someone gets less, somebody else is getting more, and they keep it within the county. That's my understanding of how it works. So that's why you couldn't do a countywide effort to challenge it, because somebody's got to get it.
Well, yeah.
So that's the problem. They created a process so it's every man for himself.
I personally think it would be helpful for our community to know that we, how we filed the appeal and on what basis, what the reasons were. And I know it was in the dissent letter, so I'm glad to know that you provided that, the reasons related to fire and flood and drought. But I think it needs to be more of a public thing, because we've heard from our community that a lot of people feel that we're just accepting the number and haven't done enough to, resist, if you will.
Would it be possible, Vice Mayor Hellman, since it's already been filed, that Garrett provides it as a consent item, and then if it needs to be pulled for further discussion, we could do that?
Yeah.
So he provides what we submitted with a staff report, and then if we need to have further discussion, we could do that. But on consent initially, does that make sense to you? I see one thumb raised. I'm raising my thumb.
And would the idea just be this is what we shared, or would it be to submit an appeal through a different mechanism?
Well, I don't know if I could appeal twice. Once I think I already appealed for the town, but I don't think there's a rule that we couldn't submit more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine. I'm fine either way. I mean, we'll put it on consent.
Yeah, put it on consent.
And then you guys can decide what you want and comment. If you want us to do more, we can.
Okay, so Garrett, you don't see any issues with making public what was written in the appeal, given that it's sort of a competition like you described?
It's a public document anyway, once you submit it.
All right, great.
Right. Yeah. But it's like I said, it's just a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a winner and a loser, and most likely you're going to deny the appeal anyway, so everybody stays the same.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. I think it matters, though, that if everyone is pushing back on the basis of fire safety, that's an important statement, And
sure, and I think everyone's appealing. Don't get me wrong. I think all of Contra Costa County is appealing too, but I think we're all pretty realistic. The odds are slim to none.
Yeah.
I don't have any future agenda items. Oh, there's one.
Yeah, I had one. Coming out of our joint session with the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee. It appeared as if there was an ask to formally consider or reconsider the Police Practices and Public Safety Alternative Committee's current classification is like a standing committee, and whether or not it should change, since it's a shorter term committee, to be no longer under the purview specifically of the Brown Act and have agendas and meetings, since there's less than a quorum. And I hope that we can agendize that, maybe if not this upcoming meeting, the other meeting in July, or I guess the first meeting in August, to have that formal discussion.
You're speaking of the PPPSA in particular. Yeah.
Correct.
What would people think about that being in the second meeting in July? Because
there's only one meeting in July.
Well, that's right. There is only one meeting in July.
So it'd have to come first meeting, this regular meeting of August.
That's fine with me.
We could do that, I think, because we're just, with apologies to Lisa, I know you're listening. Yeah, we're packing this agenda for July 7th. We're going to be brain dead by the end of it. Okay, let's go with the July then.
So just for clarification, Councilmember Catrano, are you suggesting that that meeting be in joint session again? Or would it just be a council agenda item?
A council agenda item based on this discussion that we just had this afternoon.
And on the August agenda.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have an item that I would be remiss not to bring up, but I really just want to toss it and see what you all think. San Anselmo recently, I guess at their last meeting, went forward and 4-1 approval of a rent freeze ordinance. I didn't know if there was any appetite on council to explore that for possible consideration adoption. I spoke to Garrett about it, and not sure if he had a chance to speak with Dave Donnery. But as much as I learned about it, it seemed that they had done it rather painlessly, but I imagine there'll be lots of different feelings about it.
My feeling is, I think we did the eviction moratorium, and I think that's more important. And I think with the rental assistance program, that's helping people. Also remember that San Anselmo does not have just cause eviction, and they do not have the mandatory in the county. We're the only place in the county, other than the county and San Rafael. I guess my internet's unstable.
We're still
Did anyone hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, my internet's unstable, and it actually, just so you know, it went out in the middle of the meeting, so I had to completely get it back on. So something's goofy over here.
It means it's time to go to bed.
I probably wouldn't go to bed, but it started about 7:30, so just so you know.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would love to know more about it, I guess.
Same, and also the timeline. I don't
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know enough about it.
Well, actually, they're also going just through September 30th, and they are considering at their next meeting the eviction moratorium. So, it's a pretty short little piece of time for something that is complex, and I would be very curious to hear from Janet, although that would take us agendizing it, because otherwise we're talking about the item.
Was it an urgency ordinance?
Mm,
Is it regular? I can't remember. If it's regular, by the time you did it, it'd already be into September.
well, so that's my question. Is it something that we have any kind of desire to have staff explore? It would,
I personally think that we have staff exploring so many things for such a limited amount of people. And I do think we have more tools than they have. And I just don't think we need to have yet another thing like this at this point. But I've already spoken twice. So.
I would be okay to put this in the parking lot, but I would like it to be in the parking lot, because we do not know what's going to come down in the fall and moving forward in terms of what happens with tenants situations.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea.
Landlords have been hurting as well. So it's complex. I'm not quite sure I agree with the way San Anselmo dove into it, but I would like it. I wanted it on the table.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, I guess it seems to me like we've got a lot to cover, and for a short short-term thing like that, it seems pretty complex at a time when we have a lot of other complex things, but yeah. We can get finished with the thing we started tonight.
So if there's nothing else, can I motion to adjourn?
Please.
Yeah. But we don't even need a motion to adjourn. All you have to do is all right. We're adjourned. Thank you. And good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We set a record, 10:03.